Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto uncovers his true potential. One discussion in the academy introduces Naruto to his first real friends and changes his life forever. Together, they will work hard, push each other, and unlock their true potential. Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel, and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard. Chapter 22, Konoha and IWA. 15 days since the preliminary exam. 16 days until the third exam. Naruto had arrived at training ground 29 around an hour earlier than the scheduled time for training. Ibiki was already there, reading a book. Upon his student's arrival, he looked up from his book, and gave him a curious stare. "You are punctual, but you usually do not show up early. Not even Kurenai-san is not here yet." Ibiki noted aloud. "Yeah, I know. I just kinda wanted to see if I could talk to you beforehand. Naruto responded awkwardly. "I wanted to talk to you about Dosu." Ibiki put his book down before giving Naruto his full attention. "What about him? What happened at the hospital yesterday? Is everything okay?" The blonde questioned, his tone of voice growing louder and contained traces of fear. "He's fine. We had a situation to handle." The TNI head grumbled. "A situation? What the hell does that mean?" Naruto shouted in response. Ibiki shook his head, a scowl on his face. The man was honestly not in the mood to discuss the incident from the previous day. The traitor, Yakushi Kabuto, managed to escape his pursuit and disappear. Ibiki and all other Konoha shinobi that were sent after him were unable to find the traitor. It bothered the scarred Tokubetsu Jonin that he missed the opportunity to capture Kabuto and find out any information about Orochimaru. To Ibiki, information was everything for shinobi. Therefore, losing the opportunity to gain new, important information was one of the biggest mistakes a shinobi could make. In his mind, he committed this error. Naruto sighed, realizing his sensei was not going to elaborate. He then returned to his original question. "Well then, what's Dosu's condition like? Is he going to be okay?" Kyuta Dosu received a severe amount of shock and trauma yesterday. He was moved to a separate location where he can rest and receive proper treatment. Ibiki answered. "Shock and trauma? Separate location? Proper treatment?" Naruto repeated the phrases before giving a concerned, slightly angry look. "What happened yesterday?" "That information is classified until further notice." The first exam proctor responded dismissively. "Classified my ass. That's my friend Adebayo." The Uzumaki snapped. "And your friend will be all right," Ibiki replied, raising his voice. Naruto's eyes widened as he let the man continue. "It is classified for a reason. I'm not refusing to tell you because I feel like it. You will find out more information when you are allowed to. The Hokage is trying to handle the situation to the best of his abilities, and until then, we want to make sure as few people know about what happened yesterday in the hospital." Naruto nodded in response, but looked even more troubled. "What happened is classified. What could have possibly gone wrong?" He shook his head. "Dosu, you better be okay." Ibiki noticed the troubled look of the Uzumaki. He sighed before he started to speak up. "Physically speaking, Dosu is fine. He will wake up eventually and will be in perfect health. Do not worry about him, Naruto. He will be fine," the proctor informed him. Naruto's troubled look disappeared. The blonde released a sigh in relief. Seeing that Naruto was okay, Ibiki picked up his book and handed it to Naruto. "Anyway, since you are here, you might as well kill some time while we wait for Kurenai. The book is on an interesting theory about chakra control. You can read it if you want and kill some time." Naruto nodded wordlessly and took the book. He sat down next to his sensei and started to read. Slowly, he became less worried about Dosu and simply started to focus on the book and his training session for the day. He'll be okay, I have to believe he will be. Naruto told himself as he flipped pages in the book. Father. Hinata said quietly as she approached her father, who had been meditating in his room. Hayashi opened his eyes and gave his daughter a curious look. Their scheduled training session wasn't set to occur for another hour, and he couldn't think of any reason why she would try and talk to her. Yes? He asked. Do you have something you want to talk about, Hinata? Why yeah? His daughter nodded. Hayashi sighed as he shook his head. His daughter's stuttering only resurfaced when she was nervous. She was clearly nervous to discuss what she was going to talk to him about. What is it? He asked expectantly. I was wondering if I could get your opinion on something. Hinata started, her eyes facing the ground. And that would be? Her father questioned, an impatient edge to his tone of voice. Hinata reached into the pocket of her jacket and pulled out a piece of paper. Hayashi gave her a curious look before taking the paper and studying it. As he looked at the paper, his eyes wandered. These are notes for an original jutsu. He mumbled before turning to his daughter. These belong to you? Uh-huh. Hinata nodded, a small blush on her face. The idea came to me, and I wanted to ask you about it. I thought the jutsu, if we can make it, would suit me better than the 8 trigrams palm rotation. Hayashi nodded in understanding. He continued to study the jutsu in great detail on the paper before he nodded in agreement. We can try and work with this today. If it seems as if it is plausible to create, then I will help you create it. Hayashi said. Hinata's blush went away as a large, excited smile graced her lips. Thank you, father. Thank you so much. It's been a while since I've seen her this happy, she reminds me so much of her mother. Hayashi noted to himself as he shook his head to avoid any nostalgic thought. So, have you experimented at all with your ideas for the jutsu? The Hyuga clan head asked out of curiosity. Hinata nodded. A little. I did once at a waterfall near the outskirts of the village. Hinata then rubbed the top of her head in relief as a slight blush colored her cheeks again. Thank God no one was there to see me practice. The Hyuga clan head nodded as he continued to study his daughter's notes. I also developed a name for the jutsu. His daughter added. Oh? Hayashi almost chuckled at her enthusiasm. Uh-huh. Hinata nodded her head again. It's kind of a loose name for now, but I'm thinking of calling it Protection of the 8 trigrams 64 palms. Hayashi actually laughed out loud at the name, getting a surprised look from his daughter. Protection of the 8 trigrams 64 palms. That sounds like a technique perfect for the clan. I hope we can design it, Hinata. The Hyuga clan head thought to himself. At the Nara clan compound, Yoshino was tossing multiple kunai knives at Shikamaru. The clan heir quickly ran through hand signs before calling out the name of his jutsu. Ninja Art, Shadow Protection Jutsu. The shadows surrounding Shikamaru formed a barrier around him. The kunai knives hit the shadow barrier and fell to the ground after impact. Yoshino continued to toss kunai at the barrier. Each kunai knife was subsequently knocked away from the boy. After she finished tossing weapons at him, Shikamaru's shadow barrier was dropped and the boy fell to his knees, breathing hard. Yoshino immediately ran up to her son and hugged him tight. Oh my boy, you are amazing. You've got the jutsu down almost perfectly and didn't take a single scratch from my knives. You are going to be the best chunin ever, damn it. Shikamaru coughed loudly in his mother's tight hug. Mom, breathing, can't. Yoshino ignored her son's protests and almost seemingly tightened her hug, causing him to gasp in pain. A few seconds passed before she let go of him. Shikamaru immediately fell to the ground head first, breathing even harder. Mom, please, when I'm exhausted, don't hug me that tight. Shikamaru said slowly between breaths. Oh, come on, you weren't that tired. You weren't even hurt. Yoshino rolled her eyes. Chakra, exhaustion, do you even understand? Her son responded with a groan. Well, obviously you aren't too exhausted if you got enough energy to be snarky. His mother retorted. Shikamaru rolled his eyes as he remained motionless on the ground for a few more seconds. After recovering from the period of chakra exhaustion, he pulled himself off the ground and faced his mother. No, but in all seriousness, I can feel my barrier growing stronger, and it's lasting longer. I'm definitely improving on it since I started. Shikamaru said with a smirk. Yup. You really have, and I'm proud of you. Yoshino gave her son a smile. And it'll only get stronger and better the more chakra you have. If we keep working on your chakra pool, the jutsu will become a reliable, impenetrable defense for you and your teammates. Shikamaru whistled in approval. I like the sound of that. Of course, you do. Shikako commented. The Nara clan head walked towards the training ground with a sake bottle in his right hand. Shikamaru and Yoshino turned their attention to Shikaku. Yoshino sighed at the sight of his alcohol. Shikaku, can you go a day without a bottle of that shit? She asked. Yoshino, we've talked about this. Honestly, I can't. He said with a loud laugh as he took a sip. Have anything for me to work on, Dad? Shikamaru asked curiously. Well, for now, I want to play you in a game of shogi. Shikaka said. Shikamaru's eyebrows rose in response. Now. Yup. His father nodded. Your mother agreed that after you were able to use the shadow protection jutsu adequately, I could borrow you away from physical training and try my hand against you in shogi, and I want to make sure we play at least once a day until the exam. He took a sip of his sake bottle before continuing. You can get back to working on increasing your chakra pool in a little bit, but I want to see how your strategic mind has developed since you became a genin. I hope you haven't been slacking in that aspect. Understood. Shikamaru nodded before getting his father a taunting smirk. And believe me, I haven't. Hey, good. I could really use a challenge. Shikaka said with a similar smirk. I swear, what is it with Nara men in shogi? Yoshino wondered as she rolled her eyes. Men are strange. The father and son walked over inside the clan compound and headed to a shogi board that Shikaku's father had already set. They proceeded to sit down and start playing. Kurenai-san, you take Naruto's clone for today. I'd like to talk to the actual Naruto. Ibiki requested. Kurenai nodded. Sure, I can work with his clone more. We're just going to keep reviewing more practical uses for the wind jutsu I'm working with him on. With that proclamation, Kurenai walked off. Naruto's shadow clone followed behind, leaving Naruto alone with Ibiki. The blonde faced the first exam proctor with an excited grin on his face. So, what's for today, Ibiki-sensei? Am I going to learn the Shunshin like you promised? Naruto asked excitedly. I'll teach it to you, Naruto, but have patience. I have something I feel might be more applicable to discuss with you. Ibiki answered. Naruto frowned at the realization that his learning of the Shunshin was pushed further back, but he still seemed excited. So, what are we going over instead then? We're going to talk about Iwagakure Shinobi for a bit. His sensei answered. The blonde blinked in response before a skull developed over his face. How is that more applicable to me? He questioned indignantly. Ibiki sighed at the blonde's tone of voice. You do realize who you are facing in the third exam, correct? Yeah, Risho. What of it? Naruto asked. And if you win against him, who is your opponent? Ibiki asked again. Well, when I take him out, I'll be going against Kuratsuchi. Naruto answered. Both of them are your first guaranteed opponents, and they are both IWA shinobi. And they aren't random IWA shinobi. They have a bit of a history. Kurotsuchi is the granddaughter of the Tsuchikage and Risho is a member of the Kurogane clan. The TNI head lectured. If there's any point I've tried to make clear to you, it's that information is vital in the shinobi world. Having information on their background and some of the techniques that are associated with their backgrounds will help you when you have to fight them. I understand. The blonde answered. But I do know a bit about Kurotsuchi. She's talked a lot to me about her grandpa and his dust release, and a lot of his story. I've also seen a lot of what she can do, including her lava release. Okay, but you may not even face her. You have to beat your first opponent first. What do you have on Risho? Ibiki questioned. Naruto scowled at the idea of him losing to Risho. He's an arrogant ass that has some iron Kekii Genkai, his clan is apparently hot shit in IWA, and he uses a sword. What about him? And with that little of an understanding of him, you'll certainly lose in a fight against him. Ibiki sighed, massaging his temples. Naruto's skull turned into a frown. He knew Ibiki had a point. So what do I not know about him? From what I observed during the preliminaries, the boy fights like a stereotypical Kurogane, so information on his clan will definitely help you. Ibiki noted before he started his lecture. The Kurogane clan was one of the 3 founding clans of IWA. They are as influential to IWA as the Uchiha and the Senju were to Konoha. And they are famous for the iron release bloodline. Their blood is filled with black iron fragments. With their Kekii Genkai, they are able to manipulate all variants of iron, including the iron inside their body. So, he is able to bring that iron out of his body and surround himself in it, right? That's how he creates that armor of his? Naruto realized. Ibiki nodded. Yes. Most people usually associate that as the only aspect of the Kurogane's iron release. However, they tend to forget that their manipulation of iron also affects iron outside of their body. Meaning, if you toss any iron weapons at them, they can redirect them at you. Naruto gulped in response. So, I take it I shouldn't use any of my kunai or shuriken in my fight against him. Definitely not. The Tokubetsu Jonin agreed before continuing with his lecture. In addition to their iron release, the Kurogane clan is also famous for another aspect, their kenjutsu. Each shinobi of the Kurogane clan is a master of the sword. Jonin-level shinobi from the clan could probably rival the kenjutsu of the 7 swordsmen from Kiri. But Risho isn't a Jonin-level shinobi. Naruto commented. He isn't, but if he's even slightly competent in his clan's teachings, he's a lot better in kenjutsu than any regular genin. And that makes him a dangerous adversary in the battlefield at close-range combat. Ibiki explained with a slight glare at Naruto for interrupting him. Point taken. The blonde sighed. Do you know anything about their kenjutsu style? Ibiki shook his head with a frown. The Kurogane is secretive about their kenjutsu for a reason. It is the pride of their clan and sometimes is looked at even more favorably than their iron release bloodline. Great. Naruto sighed. So, knowing this general background of the Kurogane, what does that tell you about how you need to approach your fight with Risho in the 3rd exam? Ibiki asked. The Uzumaki remained quiet for a few seconds as he recalled the information Ibiki explained. He opened his eyes as he started to explain. Well, based on what you said, I probably will just leave my weapons like my kunai and shuriken out of the arena. They are useless to me and extra weapons for him if he can just manipulate them. Naruto explained. And if he's really good at kenjutsu, then I need to fight him from a distance. He'll excel at close range, so I need to keep him away from me. And his armor? Ibiki asked. Well, it's related to his Kekii Genkai. It's gotta take chakra to maintain that armor, so he can't keep it up every second. I need to make sure I try and hit him when his armor starts to fall. Maybe use some secondary attacks that will force him to activate his armor, and then him with my real strong attacks when he drops the armor. Naruto noted. Your strategy so far is rather rudimentary. But the basics of that will help you. Ibiki said with a nod. We can go over more information in a little bit on him, and help improve your general strategy. I'll tweak it and stuff when it gets closer to the fight. Naruto exclaimed. We'll have this discussion again later then. Ibiki nodded in agreement. Now, should we discuss the other IWA shinobi? Kuratsuchi? Naruto nodded, an excited grin on his face. Yeah. Let's talk about her. The two continued to talk about Naruto's opponents, preparing the blonde for his opponents in the third exam. 16 days since the preliminary exam. 13 days until the third exam. Training is cancelled for today, Shikamaru. Yoshino told Shikamaru as he walked into the kitchen of his clan compound. Really? Shikamaru gave his mother a strange look. You sick or something? No. She gave him a strange look. Just wondering. You don't strike me as the person to cancel training for no reason. Her son commented with a shrug. She isn't. Shikaka said with a sigh. The Hokage has called for a meeting with all Konoha shinobi. The meeting's in an hour, and he demands attendance from everyone. Seriously? The Nara blinked in surprise. It's annoying. And a major inconvenience. Yoshino exclaimed loudly with a glare. We're making a lot of progress in your training. This is such a waste of time. We don't know yet what it's about, Yoshino. Calm down. Shikaka stated calmly to appease his wife. Yoshino's response was to toss a kitchen knife at her husband. Shikaka managed to catch it in time before it could make contact with his shoulder. He sighed in response to his wife's aggression. Wait, Dad, if there's a meeting, how do you now know what it's about? Shikamaru asked in surprise. Aren't you on the Shinobi Council? And aren't you the Jonin commander of the village? Yes to both of those questions, but the Hokage doesn't have to tell me or anyone else anything he doesn't feel we should know. Remember, he's the leader of the village, Shikamaru, not me. Shikaka said. And thank God for that. I would not be able to handle the stress of the job. You'd make a pretty shitty Hokage, Shikaku. Yoshino said with a giggle, her frustration over the meeting fading as she imagined her husband as the Hokage. Shikaku grumbled at his wife's comment while Shikamaru chuckled to himself. Still, the Nara heir couldn't help but be curious about what the meeting was about. Sarutobi Hiruzen had sent word of his meeting to his umbu to inform all active shinobi present in the village. He called for the shinobi to be outside the Hokage's mansion by 10 a.m. At the appointed time, the Hokage appeared at the balcony of his mansion and stood at the edge for all of his shinobi to see. All of the shinobi were staring at him, wondering what the Hokage wanted to say to everyone. Shinobi of Konoha, as you all know, the third exam of the Chunin exams is on the way. I'm sure the candidates still in the exam have been training hard in preparation. Hiruzen noted with a slight smile on his face. At the time of the third exam, the village receives many visitors from neighboring countries and villages. They come to place bets and watch the exams. Among these visitors are the other leaders of foreign shinobi nations who made it to this portion of the exam. Many of the shinobi in attendance nodded in response. This was common knowledge to them, and they were confused at what the Hokage was trying to explain to them. To those who were unaware, Iwagakure sent 2 genin teams to this exam. Amongst these teams, 2 genin qualified for the third exam. Therefore, the Tsuchikage along with his bodyguards from IWA will be attending the final exam. Hiruzen announced. The reaction was instantaneous. The shinobi audience started to scream and shout in protest. Hokage-sama, surely you are kidding? You would never allow any more filthy IWA shinobi into the village? Don't let those murderers in. The Tsuchikage is a madman. Hokage-sama, don't let a person like that into the village. Hiruzen sighed, having expected the reaction. He knew why his shinobi would be angry at the idea of the Tsuchikage coming to Konoha and, in his opinion, the anger was justified. That didn't change anything in his mind, however. I realize that many of you have problems and resentment towards IWA due to our history with them. The Sandaime said in a loud voice, silencing the complaints from his audience. However, it has been years since the last Shinobi World War. Our villages want what is best for our villages, and having an environment of tension between our villages is not in any of our best interests. I'm trying to break this tension, and the Chunin exams this year seem to be an opportunity to do so. The Tsuchikage and his company will be arriving in the village in the next 2 days. When they arrive, I expect you all to treat them with the respect you would treat any other visitor to Konoha. This is an order. Do not ostracize or antagonize the visiting IWA shinobi. He stated firmly. Hokage-sama, you ask too much. One of the shinobi in the audience, Inazuka-tsum, barked in response. Iwagakure killed many of my clan's shinobi in cold blood. They killed my brother, damn it. You can't honestly expect me or any of us to be civil with them. Yes, I do expect you. Hiruzen responded, glaring at the Inazuka clan head. Tsum, you and the Inazuka clan are not the only ones who lost lives in the war. I personally lost many members of my clan. Members of my immediate family, including my younger sister and brother, died in the war. But IWA also lost shinobi too. For all the lives we lost, we took just as many. The Tsuchikage had to bury 2 of his 3 children after the war. And there were plenty of other Iwagakure casualties, and therefore, many IWA families who lost people they loved. Hiruzen looked upward towards the sky, as if looking for a god. I've seen too many of my shinobi die, and I'm certain Inoki feels the same way. This visit from the Tsuchikage is an opportunity to improve the relations between our villages and try and prevent any possible future deaths. The Hokage turned his eyes back towards his shinobi audience. They were narrowed and filled with determination. I don't care if you can't forgive the Iwagakure shinobi for our history with them. I'm honestly not expecting that. But you will not act on your anger and your hate. It is time Konoha moves forward. I will repeat my order one more time. Do not antagonize the Tsuchikage or any of his shinobi during this time. I hope that I do not have to enforce this order. The complaining in the shinobi audience died down. Many of those shouting in protest looked downward in embarrassment after hearing Hiruzen's reasons for allowing entrance for the Tsuchikage. A few of the other shinobi who were still angry, such as Tsum, said nothing. They simply clenched their fists and kept their complaints to themselves. I wanted to get this point across to you all. The meeting is over. The Sandaime declared as he walked back into his mansion. With the Hokage's speech over, the shinobi of Konoha slowly started to leave the area and return to their usual routine. Many of them were now anxious for the arrival for the Tsuchikage and the effect it would have on the village. Due to the meeting with the Hokage, training had been cancelled for the individual members of Team 3. Therefore, after the meeting, Naruto, Hinata, and Shikamaru decided to meet up at Ichiraku's with each other for the first time since the end of the preliminaries to catch up. The Hokage looked angry today when he was giving that speech. Shikamaru said after he and his teammates placed their ramen orders. It probably didn't help that most of the other shinobi were yelling at him. Hinata added with a frown. She remembered that all of the shinobi around where she was in the crowd, including even a few Hyuga clan shinobi, were all screaming at the news that the Tsuchikage was going to be in Konoha. He's probably just frustrated and anxious. You heard the old man. He wants to make sure relations improve with IWA, and that isn't going to happen if everyone is going to get pissed that the Tsuchikage's coming to visit. Naruto commented nonchalantly. You know, I remember a time when you probably would have snapped with the other villagers at the idea of the leader of IWA coming to Konoha. The Nara noted. Naruto shrugged in response. What can I say? I've just grown up a little. I can't get mad at IWA for the war when they didn't even start the damn thing. Besides, like the old man said, we killed their people too. The blonde sighed. His eyes then narrowed in determination. This whole thing makes me want to become Hokage more than ever. I want to do my part to make sure Konoha never gets involved in a war like that again. Too many people lost their lives in the war for no reason. Ha, it's like you said, you've grown up, Naruto. Shikamaru responded with a smile. Hinata nodded in agreement, a wide smile on her face. I believe in you, Naruto-kun. I know you can help Konoha find the peace we need. Ha. Naruto actually blushed as he rubbed the back of his head. Good to know I have you two to believe in me. Well, we're probably gonna be right by your side during your time as Hokage to make sure you don't fuck up things. You work on the peace, and we will do everything else for you. Shikamaru noted with a teasing smirk. Ah, shut up, lazy ass. The blonde rolled his eyes. Just calling it as it is. The Nara retorted with a snicker. Would that make us your advisors? Hinata asked with a giggle. I don't know. You guys may have been my advisors, but after that last remark from Shikamaru, I don't know anymore. Naruto responded with a glare towards the Nara. I don't want people that are just going to try and do my job for me. Don't punish me for Shikamaru-kun's comments. Hinata exclaimed in a mock-pouting manner. Ah, don't worry, Hinata-chan. Your position as my advisor is still certain. Naruto exclaimed with a smile to the Hyuga girl. He then turned his head back to Shikamaru and glared at him again. Shikamaru's position, however, is in jeopardy, Databeo. Meh, it'd probably be too much work anyway. Lazy ass. You all keep calling me that like it's some new information, as if I didn't know I was lazy. Then do something about it. I don't feel like I should. Damn it, Shikamaru. Hinata giggled as she watched her two teammates banter back and forth about Shikamaru's work effort. The bantering continued for a good 10 minutes. It only ended when their ramen was delivered. The boys were forced to stop as they started to eat. Upon finishing his first bowl of ramen, Naruto tried to strike up conversation again. So, switching topics to something more fun, how's your guys' training going? He asked. 'Cause I know I've been working my ass off. It's a giant pain, but I can tell it is helping. Shikamaru answered with a sigh. Mom and Dad are actually taking my training pretty seriously. I know a lot more of my clan's techniques and strategies. So, are you ready for your fight with Shino-san? Hinata asked. That I do not know. Shino's smart. Fighting him is just going to be annoying. The Nara noted with a groan. What about you, Hinata? Ready for you, cousin? A frown crept over Hinata's face. Honestly, I don't know. I feel better about my taijutsu than I ever have before, but I'm still worried. Niji and I-san is a prodigy, and he's going to be even tougher by the time of the match. Don't worry about him, Hinata-chan. Just keep focusing on yourself and your training. You'll definitely kick ass in the exam, Databeo. Naruto exclaimed positively. I hope so. The Hyuga heiress mumbled in response. Trust me, I know so. The blonde replied. Hinata responded with a smile at her crush's belief in her. And you, Naruto? You ready for Risho? Shikamaru asked. You have no idea. I'm more than ready. I'm frickin' excited for our match. Naruto exclaimed confidently. I'm gonna pull the stick out of his ass and whack him with it a good few times. That's a beautiful mental image. The Nara rolled his eyes. You know it. Naruto responded by sticking out his tongue. Hinata giggled again at the dynamic between Naruto and Shikamaru. I missed seeing both of you every day. Shikamaru nodded in agreement. Yeah, things are never really boring with you two. Sometimes things can be annoying with you too, but they are never boring. Was that a Shikamaru way of saying I missed you guys too? Naruto asked with a teasing grin on his face. What do you think? The Nara asked with a scoff. Despite his tone of voice, he did have the same grin that Naruto had. Ah, I missed you too, Shikamaru. You too, Hinata. Naruto said as he reached over and pulled Shikamaru and Hinata into a hug. Not so tight, please, my mom just gave me a similar hug and I couldn't breathe. Shikamaru commented with lighter breath. Naruto responded, just as Yoshino did, by tightening the hug. Even Hinata tightened her hug, much to Shikamaru's chagrin. Can't breathe, hate you both. The Nara cursed. Despite constant hours of training and time away, Team 3 managed to have an afternoon where they were able to interact. This proved a point to them. No matter what happens and whether or not they were able to spend time with each every day, they would always be friends with things to do and talk about whenever they managed to see each other. 18 days since the preliminary exam. 11 days until the third exam. 2 days had passed since the Hokage delivered his order to the shinobi of Konoha. Early in the afternoon, the doors to Konoha opened up and the people standing nearby couldn't help but stare. 10 Iwagakure shinobi walked through the gates of Konoha at the same tonight. Standing in front of this group of shinobi was Inoki, the Sandaime Tsuchikage. Both Konoha civilian and shinobi couldn't help but stare as the group of IWA shinobi walked into Konoha. Many were staring in fear at the sight of Inoki, a shinobi who was seen as equally strong as their Sandaime Hokage. A few of the other passers-by glared at the IWA shinobi. No one said a thing, however. They merely stared as the IWA shinobi walked by. 2 of the Iwagakure shinobi seemed to notice the staring. One of them was a black-haired young man around the age of 20 wearing brown armor that covered his entire body. He had 2 scabbards to his side, with swords sticking out of them. The other shinobi was an older man in his 50s with a red ponytail, mustache, and beard. He wore red clothes with a brown sash over them, and had his forehead protector styled in the shape of a crown on his head. Look at all of them. They're staring at us like rabbits staring at a predator or something. They're scared at the sight of us. The black-haired man with the sword said with a scowl. I forgot just how generally pathetic the people of Konoha were. In their defense, Kosari, it's not every day you see the Tsuchikage walk casually down the streets of the village. I'm pretty sure they're more focused on him and scared of him. They could probably give a rat's ass about us. The red-haired man commented. But they shouldn't fear him, Rashi. The man, Kosari, retorted. No one in IWA would be afraid of the Hokage. I'll look directly into the face of that monkey bastard and, hell, I may have a few words for him. Monkey bastard? Rashi repeated the phrase with a frown on his face. No offense. Kosari responded with an uncaring tone of voice. Yeah, whatever. The man sighed. Conversation stopped between the 2 men as they focused on where they were going. The IWA shinobi followed their Kage, who was prepared to go meet with the Hokage. Ugh. Kinyuta Dosa woke up with a throbbing pain in his head. The pain was great enough that he wasn't able to hear or see properly. It took him a full minute before the pain died down, and he was able to register where he was. He mumbled, looking around. The bandaged genin had thought he was still in the Konoha hospital. Instead, he was in a dark room with no windows that resembled a prison cell. Dosu looked around in panic and confusion. Where am I? What happened? He said, trying to remember what had last happened to him. He recalled his confrontation with Kabuto and knew that the Oto spy was planning to kill him. Is this hell? Ah, you are awake. 'Bout time. A voice spoke up. Dosa turned his head and saw another individual standing in the room by a door. The bandaged genin immediately recognized the man, and his visible eye widened in surprise. He then grew fearful, inching away from the man. Jiraiya. He mumbled out the name. One of the Sannin. So you recognize me. Go figure. Make sense you would, considering you were on Orochimaru's side. Bet the snake had a couple of things to say about me. Jiraiya noted with a sigh. Where are we? Dosu asked. Well, we are in a secret room in the Hokage's mansion. It was designed a few years ago by the Sandaime Hokage as a place for conversations without fear of spies. Believe me, no one other than me and him know how to get into this place. Jiraiya commented. And why am I here then? Dosu continued to question. Well, you were almost killed. Sarutobi-sensei thought it would be for the best to hide you somewhere that none of Orochimaru's shinobi could ever find you. And he chose here. Jiraiya answered with a shrug. Dosu said nothing. His visible eye turned downward. Now that his immediate questions about where he was answered, he was forced to come to reality about what had happened earlier. Orochimaru had deemed him a failure, and had sent Kabuto to kill him. So if you know I worked for Orochimaru, then why am I here? He asked, his voice filled with zero emotion. Are you attempting to gain information about him? You are here so that Orochimaru doesn't kill you. Jiraiya explained. His eyes then narrowed on the boy in front of him. But yes, I am here because the village needs information. Your former master is plotting something against Konoha, and I need to know what in order to stop his plans. I figured you had more tact than to outright admit that you want information. Dosu deadpanned. The Sannin shrugged in response. Konoha is desperate, and you are our only lead. Your teammates have disappeared and Kabuto has gone missing since the incident in the hospital. That might explain my bluntness if you will. The former Oto Genin gave no response. He continued to look downward in a dejected fashion. Jiraiya, seeing the boy in his silent state, sighed in frustration. Look, I'm just trying to be diplomatic. You do know I or Ibiki can force the information out of you through any means necessary. Jiraiya noted with a frown. It was evident he didn't want to perform anything necessary, but he also seemed as if he was willing to. I'm trying to make this easier for you. Jiraiya, let me inform you of some general information about the kinds of people Orochimaru picks to be his pawns. Dosu started to speak up, his tone of voice still having no emotion. We were all desperate and in need of help prior to meeting him. We were all close to dying on our own, but then Orochimaru came and gave us all a second chance to live. He gave us a life. No matter what he does, we all owe him that debt. The former Oto Genin looked up, his visible eye focused on Jiraiya intently. What makes you think you will be able to get any information out of me? Orochimaru did not give you a life out of the goodness of his heart. He wanted you alive to do his bidding. What he has put you and many of the other people under him through is not a life. Jiraiya responded, returning Dosu's gaze with his own. No matter how much loyalty or dedication you felt towards him, Orochimaru felt nothing towards you. Do you honestly feel you owe a debt to a man who threw you away when he saw fit? Dosu gave no response again. His visible eye looked downward once more. Jiraiya sighed. A few seconds passed and Jiraiya was about to change tactics, to tactics of a more violent nature, when Dosu spoke up again. What alerted you that I was in danger? How did you know Kabuto was coming to kill me? He asked quietly. From what I heard, Ibiki came to your rescue after talking to a student that he is training. The boy apparently had a shadow clone with you, and when Kabuto destroyed it when he entered the room, the boy demanded his sensei come to the hospital to make sure you were okay. Jiraiya explained the story he had been told. Naruto. Dosu mumbled. Jiraiya was surprised for a moment after hearing the name of Ibiki's student, but then he continued his speech. The boy cared about you. He was afraid that something happened to you, and wanted to make sure that whatever attacked his shadow clone wasn't going to attack you. After Jiraiya explained what had happened, tears started to roll down Dosu's visible eye. The boy looked up at Jiraiya for about 5 seconds before starting to speak again. You tell me what you know about Orochimaru's plans. Whatever you don't know, I will tell you. Dosu said quietly. Upon arriving at the Konoha Ninja Academy, Inoki dismissed his shinobi. The 10 IWA shinobi that were following him left the area to commence in business of their own accord. The aged Tsuchikage walked into the mansion and was escorted to the Sandame's office. Sarutobi Hiruzen was already inside. Once the Tsuchikage had entered, the Hokage gave a smile at the foreign shinobi. Inoki-san, it has been a while. I hope your travel went well. Hiruzen said cordially. It was well for the most part. Until my back cracked about halfway. Inoki responded with a groan. We are old, Inoki-san. These things happen at our age. The Hokage chuckled. Bah, speak for yourself. I'm not that old. I've got another 30 years left at least. The Tsuchikage declared, striking a pose to show off his youth. A cracking sound could be heard and the man dropped his pose, his hand now firmly gripped to his hip. Irk. Are you all right? Hiruzen asked as he started to walk forward. Inoki held up his hand, ushering Hiruzen away. I'm fine. A few seconds passed as Inoki relieved himself of the hip pain. The Tsuchikage and Hokage sat down in their chairs, facing each other. The two men remained in a tense silence until Hiruzen decided to break it. Are you looking forward to the Chunin exams this year, Inoki-san? Hiruzen asked. I was honestly surprised that you sent even one Genin team to the exams this year. It's been a long time since an IWA Genin team has been to a Konoha exam. Honestly, I'm surprised as well. Inoki admitted. But I sent 2 team and I got Genin still in the finals, one of them being my granddaughter. I'm more than looking forward to it. I saw your granddaughter in the preliminary 3rd exam. She is indeed impressive. The Hokage complimented. Damn right she is. She's my granddaughter after all. She's honestly one of the best shinobi in her whole generation. The Tsuchikage praised before he shook his head. Not that I'm ever going to tell her that. Stubborn little brat already has enough pride as it is. I'm not going to have any part in letting her already oversized head grow any larger. The Hokage chuckled in response. A few seconds passed before he returned the topic back to a previous point that Tsuchikage had mentioned. Inoki-san, you mentioned that you were surprised you sent a Genin team to Konoha. Hiruzen noted. Do you care if I ask why? Don't care that much. Inoki shrugged. He then sighed in response. You know about the joint mission between our villages. The one involving a merchant and 2 high-ranked missing ninja? Yes. Hiruzen nodded in response. He remembered reading that mission report multiple times to make sure he understood all of the details of that mission clearly. I'm still stunned that your Genin team helped my team out when they were attacked. Legitimately stunned. Inoki admitted. The team that your team helped included my granddaughter and one of my most infamous shinobi, Yuga no Han. Hiruzen nodded again. He remembered vividly the surprise he felt on learning that the Gobi Jinchuriki was involved in that mission. C-rank missions never go according to plan, honestly, they may be the most dangerous missions out there. Han hates humanity. He completely hates everyone other than the Yonbi Jinchuriki, due to the fact that they are Jinchuriki. He barely tolerates me and any other shinobi. I've done my part to try and help his hate. Hell, I thought giving him a Genin team with my granddaughter would have helped him get used to people again and warm up to humanity, but it didn't work. Inoki said with a sigh. Then that mission happens and somehow, the team you assigned to the mission got through to him. Han comes back and he's distinctly more happy. He can actually tolerate the presence of other people now. Something I had been trying to accomplish for years, your team managed to accomplish in just a few days. Don't think too much of it, Inoki-san. Naruto has that effect on people. Hiruzen resisted the urge to chuckle at that thought. He had a feeling that his blonde surrogate grandson played a role in returning Han's faith in humanity. Han also suggested mending relations with your village and forming an alliance. One of the most hateful shinobi I've ever had work under me, who could care less about any pathetic human he had to kill, was asking me to improve our relationship with your village. Anoki stated, finishing his story. Are you proposing an alliance? Hiruzen asked carefully, trying to hide any trace of hope. Honestly, Sarutobi, I'm not for certain. Maybe. Anoki admitted with a sigh. I just want to see what Han found so damn compelling about Konoha that changed his mind. If he of all people can get over his hate, then I feel I can, and so can the rest of IWA. The Tsuchikage sighed again before speaking. I guess that's probably the real reason I sent Jin and teams here. Just to see what Han saw in Konoha. I hope you find what you are looking for in my village. The Hokage stated with a smile on his face. Yeah. I'll see. Anoki grumbled. The exam this year was also convenient for me personally as well. Kuratsuchi had been begging to become Chunin recently, so I finally decided to end her bitching and just send her team to the exams. I understood. I have a certain shinobi that I consider a grandson that has a similar mentality. Hiruzen noted, thinking back to his surrogate grandson. Bah, this younger generation all act the same, no matter what village. They feel as if they just deserve to become Chunin. No, you fucking don't. You earned the title, damn it. Anoki declared passionately. Do you have any idea the hell I went through to earn my promotions? Hiruzen continued to laugh. He and Anoki got into a heated discussion about the differences between their generation of shinobi and the younger generations. In Sarutobi's mind, it did seem Konoha and IWA were on the right path to improving relations. Today was an off day from training for both Kuratsuchi and Risho. The two IWA genin were resting in their hotel room. Kuratsuchi was reading a book on Konoha history while Risho was reading a manga. They were reading in peaceful silence until they heard a loud knock on their door. Kuratsuchi, Risho, I need to talk to you both. Han spoke from the other side. Kuratsuchi and Risho glanced at one another. A moment passed before Kuratsuchi sighed. She put down her book and walked over to the door. The kunoichi opened the door and expected to see her sensei only. Instead, she was greeted to him along with two other IWA shinobi. One of these other shinobi was very familiar to the kunoichi. Old man Rashi, is that you? Kuratsuchi asked with a grin. In the fresh, kiddo. How's it been going? Rashi stated with a similar grin. Kuratsuchi gave the Yonbi Jinchuriki a high five as she welcomed him into the hotel room. Risho looked over to the door from his spot on his bed, and he gasped when he saw the other shinobi. Kukusari. He mumbled out the name, dropping the manga in his hand. Humph. Risho, get out of bed. Kusari ordered. Why, yes, sir. The boy exclaimed as he got out bed and rushed over to front of the room to greet the IWA shinobi. What are you doing here? This was my idea. Han stated, speaking up. Risho, Kuratsuchi, as you know, I have been training you both for the third exam. However, this is rather unfair, considering I'm dividing up your training time to be able to teach you both. It's also unfair considering that, assuming you win your first match Risho, the two of you will be fighting. The IWA Jonin then gestured to the two new IWA shinobi in the room. Therefore, I called for assistance in your training. For the remaining few days, the two of you will be training separately with your own teachers in preparation for the exam. So does that mean I get some one-on-one training with you, Rashi? Kuratsuchi asked, her grin growing larger somehow. Rashi nodded. Yup. And believe me, I have a lot to teach you. We got a lot to go over with the lava release. Hell yeah. Kuratsuchi nearly squealed in excitement. Moving along. Han shook his head, ignoring his kunoichi student having a spez moment, as she would call it with his fellow Jinchuriki. Yes, Kuratsuchi will be training with Rashi. And you, Risho, will be training with Kasari. I know the two of you are cousins and that Kasari is one of the finest shinobi in your clan. He most certainly can help you out with the intricacies of your bloodline and your kenjutsu better than I can. We'll have lots of fun training, won't we, Risho? Kasari noted, a malicious grin on his face. It'll be just like old times back when we were younger. You remember back then, don't you? Why yeah, sure do. Good times? Risho nodded hesitantly. Han's eyebrow raised in response. He had assumed his student would have been thrilled to train with Kasari. Considering all the praise he had given his clan and his cousin, he felt that he would have more of a positive training. The Jonin was now confused and concerned at his student's reaction. Anyway, I felt this was the best way to ensure that the two of you were able to receive proper training and attention to prepare for the third exam. That is all I had to discuss with you two. Training will begin again tomorrow at 7 a.m. sharp. Han declared. With his instruction passed, Han bowed before leaving the room of his students. Rashi and Kasari followed behind. The Yanbi Jinchuriki waved goodbye to the two genin while Kasari left without a word or any gesture. Guess training is going to be on our own now. Kuratsuchi noted to her teammate, a grin still on her face. Best of luck, Risho, then. Learn all you can from your cousin, 'cause I'm going to beat the shit out of you when it's time for our match. Why yeah, whatever. Risho mumbled as he laid on his back. Kuratsuchi's grin faded. She had expected some banter from her teammate in response to the idea of him losing his fight with her. Instead, he remained mostly quiet. Such quiet behavior was rare for him. Risho had nothing to say and neither did Kuratsuchi. The two returned to their respective books and remained in silence in their hotel room. Sarutobi Hirozen was in good spirits as he watched Inoki leave his office. The two Kage had a spirited conversation, and it seemed in his opinion that they were beginning on improving the relationship between their villages. It looked as if Konoha's number one aggressor in the shinobi world, IWA, was going to not be hostile in the future. That thought alone brought great peace and relief to the aged Hokage. Hiruzen's peace was not long, however, as he soon felt the presence of another shinobi. He turned his head to his window and saw his student, Jiraiya, sitting down right by the open window. Seems like things are going well between IWA. That's something good. Jiraiya noted in a neutral tone. Hiruzen nodded. Yes. The Hokage gave his student a serious look. Jiraiya, did you find anything out? The Sannin nodded in response. Yup. That Dosa guy ended up sharing a lot of info. His sensei nodded in response. He then gave Jiraiya an expectant look. What did he tell you? We were right about all of our theories. Orochimaru is actually the leader of Otogekure. He is indeed planning an invasion during the Chunin exams. Jiraiya stated in response. There's a lot of things we are going to have to talk about, but the biggest new thing I learned was this: Tsunagekure is aiding Orochimaru. They are also participating in the invasion. Hiruzen's good mood immediately disappeared. He now felt he was going to need a drink and a smoke in order to calm down after this conversation with Jiraiya. Chapter 23, Exam Training Complete. 22 days since the preliminary exam. 1 week until the third exam. Naruto created a shadow clone to work with Kurenai on his training. Ibiki had requested to spend the day working with the original Naruto. The blonde waited impatiently for the scarred Tokubetsu Jonin to begin their training. It's getting close to time. There's only 1 more week left until the exam. Ibiki stated to the boy. We don't have much time, so we have to make every second count. I understand. Naruto nodded in response. The blonde gulped a little at the thought of the exam. He wasn't scared, but it was exciting to know that the exam was coming up so soon. Again, I don't want to waste any time. We talked about this before and I made a promise to you, but I want to know, do you really wish to learn the Shunshin now? Ibiki asked. Naruto's eyes widened at hearing that the elusive Shunshin no Jutsu that he had wanted to learn was being offered to him again. A grin appeared on his face. Of course. Naruto said excitably. Why? The first exam proctor questioned as he stared at Naruto intently. Naruto's eyes lit up as he started to discuss to the jutsu. It helps improve the user's speed and their evasion. With the Shunshin, I would be able to use it to avoid attacks that I normally couldn't and to help with my positioning in a fight. So, you actually have a plan on how to use this jutsu? You don't wish to learn it simply because Anko uses this jutsu a lot? Ibiki further questioned, his stare turning into a slight glare. The Uzumaki's excitement faded slightly and he sighed. Well, I am going to admit, that's what started my interest in the jutsu. It was just plain annoying watch her use it over and over again. Naruto's excitement then returned to his eyes. But then I actually studied the jutsu on my own one time and learned what it was really used for, and I knew I needed to learn it. I know it'll make me stronger and improve some of the skills I am kinda lacking in. Ibiki closed his eyes in thought. Naruto stared at the Tokubetsu Jonin nervously, waiting to hear what the man was going to say. A few seconds passed before Ibiki opened his eyes and pulled out a scroll in his pocket. If you actually have a plan on how to properly use this jutsu in a fight, then I will teach it to you. It's always good to have a jutsu like this in your arsenal. Ibiki noted as he tossed the scroll to Naruto. The blonde caught the scroll in his right hand. A large grin crossed his face as he opened it and started to study the jutsu more. You seem to know about the fundamentals and some of the general uses of the jutsu. So, let's not waste time, Naruto. Look for any new information you need in the scroll, then we'll start working on it. Since we are going to practice this, I want you to be ready to use this jutsu in the third exam. Ibiki ordered. Gotcha. The blonde replied. Naruto continued to study the jutsu, looking for any new information that would be able to help him in understanding and mastering the jutsu as quickly as possible. At the far edge of Konoha in a training ground littered with rocks, Uchiha Sasuke was panting heavily. The boy's body was covered in bruises and cuts. Sasuke also had weights on his legs. These weights made it difficult for him to get off the ground. He, therefore, had to pull himself off the ground slowly and with a lot of effort. After finally getting off the ground, he faced the source of his injuries, Kakashi. Your speed is improving, but until you're able to dodge all of my attacks, you aren't fast enough. Kakashi told him in a matter-of-fact tone of voice. I know. Sasuke grunted in response, still breathing heavily. Kakashi had been training Sasuke during the month extensively on his speed. The copy ninja was trying to find ways to push Sasuke past his limits in order to prepare him for the exam. I'm just getting the point across again. I'm attacking you at what I can assume will be Lee's speed by the time of the third exam. You need to be able to match it if you want to stand a chance against him. The Jonin explained. I understand that. Sasuke sighed, thinking back to earlier in the month. Lee had sparred with the Uchiha prior to entering the Chunin exams, and he had defeated Sasuke easily. Sasuke's issue, as Kakashi had explained, was that his body wasn't able to match Lee's quick movements and attacks. His Sharingan eyes were fast enough to keep up with Lee's movement, but the Uchiha himself was not able to do that. Sasuke knew about the need to get faster and agreed with most of Kakashi's general plans for the training. However, he did have a question about Kakashi's methods in his teaching. I'm still confused on how the weights are helping me train. The Uchiha commented. They're just restricting my movement. And that's the point. If you can match Lee's speed with your movement even with your weights on, then just imagine what will happen when you take your weights off. Kakashi answered with a shrug. Besides, Lee is training with weights. I'd assume you would want to train just as hard as your competition. Sasuke scoffed in annoyance at that, but said nothing. The boy stopped his panting, and seemed to have a look of determination in his eyes. Kakashi often compared Sasuke to Lee and his other competition. The copy ninja knew that the boy was very competitive, and did not like to feel inferior in any way. In some ways, his over-competitiveness was a weakness that held him back. In terms of simply training, however, Kakashi was able to use this competitive drive of Sasuke to push the Uchiha's training further. Are you ready to continue form where we were? The masked Jonin questioned. Yeah. The Uchiha nodded in agreement. A smirk appeared on the Uchiha's face. Let's get back to work. Good. Kakashi smiled behind his mask. Remember to keep your Sharingan active again. Your eyes will follow my movements, so you can fully see my speed. You'll need to then try and push your body to move at the same speed. Yeah. I understand, Kakashi. Sasuke replied as he activated his Sharingan. He then got into a stance. Good. Then let's begin again. His sensei said, getting into a stance of his own. 23 days since the preliminary exam. 6 days until the third exam. Shikamaru and Shikako were both sitting quietly at a shogi table. The two of them had been playing the same game for around 2.5 hours now. Yoshino was observing the game impatiently, but she herself was also interested. She had found the game surprisingly intense. The Nara heir moved his bishop on the board. His father, seeing a space on the board open up to him now that the bishop was gone, moved one of his gold generals to the newly accessible space. Shikamaru proceeded to study the board intently, just like he did every time his father made a move. A full minute passed before Shikamaru brought his palm to his forehead. You just realized what you did there, didn't you? Shikako asked teasingly. Yup. Shit, that's game. Shikamaru cursed as he shook his head. He hasn't even put you in check yet. Yoshino commented as she stared at the shogi board in confusion. Just give it a sec, Mom. Shikamaru sighed in response as he made his move. The game lasted for 5 more turns. It finally ended when Shikako, using his gold general, managed to place Shikamaru into checkmate. The younger Nara sighed in frustration. I fucked that up. I should have been seeing that move of yours. He mumbled to himself. Things like that happen from time to time. Shikako noted with a smirk. Still, you were playing good up to that point. Almost had me a few times. Good game, Shikamaru. Shikako held out his hand. Shikamaru shook his hand. Despite the loss, the Nara heir did have a good, fun game. It's always good to see you playing better games than your previous ones. It does show me that your strategic mind is developing. The Jonin commander of Konoha told his son. I'm trying to keep it as sharp as I can. Shikamaru replied, a slight smirk on his face. So I am getting better then? His father nodded in response. Definitely. Good. Shikamaru replied. I'm gonna need to have a good strategic mind for the exam, especially considering who my first opponent is. Shikako nodded in agreement. Yeah, your first opponent is Shibi's son. If the kid is anything like his old man, it means that he probably inherited a lot of Shibi's characteristics. And although it probably makes the kid hell to talk to, it also makes him a dangerous enemy. I figured. Shino's a logical kind of guy who thinks steps ahead of his opponents. Shikamaru noted, thinking back to what he knows of Shino's fighting style. He knew he was going to have to always be on the lookout for the Aburim's Kakachu insects and their positioning. He also going to have to pay attention to the amount of chakra he had at any given moment and make sure Shino's bugs weren't draining him. It's not going to be a very flashy battle. It's going to be a more mental fight. We don't have too many days to work with Shikamaru. Yoshino said, speaking up. We've all been doing well so far this month and you haven't been complaining about training that much, something I've been very proud of you for. We're just going to need to pick it up these last few days. Shikaku will keep working on improving your strategies, and I'll do my part to make sure your body and your chakra pool are in tip-top shape. The Nara mother then faced her with a son with a determined smile. You ready for it? Shikamaru resisted the urge to groan at the idea of more work. Instead, a similar smile developed on his face. All right. Let's do this. Lava style, scorching rocks jutsu. In a training ground near the hot springs of Konoha, Kuratsuchi released giant balls of lava from her mouth. The lava balls solidified into molten rock before hitting nearby trees. Most of the trees hit were knocked over immediately with the lava continuing to burn them. A few of the trees, however, melted upon impact with the molten rocks. Roshi observed Kuratsuchi's jutsu with a proud smile on his face. Hell yeah! That's how you do it, kiddo! He exclaimed happily as he looked at his student. Good job, Kuratsuchi. Kuratsuchi? He then gave her a strange look. My mouth is burning. Kuratsuchi screamed. The Iwa Kunoichi sprinted towards a water canteen and startled to drink it rapidly. Roshi watched his student's actions with a mixture of a sigh and a laugh. Well, that happens sometimes with that jutsu. You need to get used to the burning sensation. Or make sure you don't apply too much heat on the jutsu until you release the lava from your mouth. Roshi commented in a sage-like manner. Kuratsuchi gave him a nod, showing that she heard and understood his advice. She continued to drink from her canteen until the burning sensation ended. She probably fell to her knees and sighed in relief. Oh geez, I haven't had my mouth burn that badly since I tried Han-sensei's extra hot tea. Kuratsuchi mumbled to herself. Roshi laughed loudly at that. Han enjoys the hot teas and other foods. Like me. There's a reason we are called the Fiery Demon Brothers, you know? I thought it had to do with both of you being Jinchuriki, and because you both used heat-related jutsus. Kuratsuchi noted. I'm sure people were also aware of our refined taste in food and beverage when they came up with our nickname. The older man stated sharply. Suyer. Kuratsuchi mumbled, a playful smirk on her face. In all seriousness though, you've improved. Not only with this jutsu, but in your lava style overall. I'm impressed, Kuratsuchi. Roshi told her with a smile on his face. I have a feeling you'll make your Gramps proud come exam time. And at the very least, you'll make Chunin easily. That's what I'm going for. She exclaimed, jumping up and down slightly. Hopefully you'll end up fighting Risho, by the way. Just between you and me, I know that our lava jutsus actually heat up the Kurigane's iron armor and, if strong enough, can actually melt through it. If you fight him, you'll be able to pierce that annoying defense of his pretty easily. I know about that. I'm not too worried about Risho. Kuratsuchi answered with a shrug. Although, I'm not counting out Naruto yet. I think there's a decent chance he could be the one I fight instead. That's the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, right? Roshi questioned. Kuratsuchi nodded, which caused the red-haired man to grin. I've heard a lot about him from Han. Lots of good things. Most definitely. He's actually a really funny guy and the two of us actually share a lot of the same ideals. The Kunoichi noted thoughtfully. I actually hope he achieves his goal and becomes Hokage. That would benefit the whole shinobi world in my mind. Really? You think that much of him? The Yonbi Jinchuriki asked. Seeing his student nod, he developed a smirk on his face and let out a loud laugh. Han actually said something similar. Damn, I really need to meet the kid sometime soon then. You'll meet him soon at the exam. Believe me, it's hard not to notice him when he's in the same room with you. Kuratsuchi noted with a giggle. We'll see. Roshi stated before shaking his head. Anyway, we got off topic. We should probably get back to work. Your mouth isn't still burning. Burning, is it? Because we're probably going back to work with the jutsu. Kuratsuchi gulped slightly, but she shook her head in response. I'm good. Ready again? Always. Rashi laughed as he and Kuratsuchi went back to practice. 24 days since the preliminary exam. 5 days until the third exam. We did it. Hayashi commented in amazement as he stared at his daughter. Hinata was lying on the floor of the training ground, breathing heavily. Many different kunai and shuriken were scattered on the floor around her, but she herself had no injuries from the weapons. There were also a couple of Hyuga shinobi in the room that had been pushed back towards the walls of the room. They all got up feeling a heavy amount of pain both in their back and their stomach. That was good. One of the Hyuga shinobi commented as he excused himself to go see one of the medics in the compound. The other Hyuga shinobi excused themselves as well, leaving Hinata and Hayashi alone. The Hyuga clan head went over and started to pick up the scattered weapons on the ground. At this point, Hinata got up and started to help her father pick up the weapons. Father, the jutsu worked. Hinata stated happily. She was still tired, preventing her from being too excited. I noticed. It did. Hayashi gave his daughter a proud smile. Your notes were very accurate and sound. We were able to create your jutsu, which is both the perfect offensive and defensive jutsu for someone with your fighting style. Hayashi and Hinata had picked up all the weapons and put them away. One day, Hinata, your jutsu will be taught to other Hyuga clan shinobi, and will be used to help save their lives. Your name will be going on the jutsu as the creator. Hayashi told her with a smile. You've done an amazing job. I am so proud of you, and I know your mother would be too. Hinata's eyes widened in surprise at her father's compliments. In seconds, they filled up with tears as she rushed over to her father and pulled him into a hug. Father, thank you. Hinata mumbled, her head buried in his chest. Hayashi returned his daughter's hug. You have nothing to thank me for, Hinata. You've done a good job. The father and daughter stayed quiet for a few seconds. The silence was interrupted though as they heard a noise from the ceiling. The two pulled away from the hug and looked upward in confusion. Hinata wiped the tears out of her eyes as she tried to find the source of the noise. Hayashi had an idea at the noise. He picked up a kunai and tossed it at a seemingly random ceiling tile. Almost immediately, a little girl fell from the ceiling. She screamed. Hanabi? Hinata gasped. The Hyuga clan head managed to catch the little girl, Hanabi, before she hit the ground. He placed her down on the ground gently before giving her a stern look. Hanabi, we've discussed this before. Your sister doesn't spy on your training sessions, so I don't appreciate you trying to spy on yours. He said sternly. Hanabi? You were spying on me? Hinata asked in surprise. I just wanted to see the new jutsu you were working on. Hanabi spoke up quickly in her defense. Hayashi opened his mouth to continue to scold his youngest daughter, but Hinata started to speak before him. Really? Did you see it? She questioned out of curiosity. Hanabi nodded in affirmation. A smile appeared on her face. I did. It was so cool. You were all like whoosh. The little girl proceeded to spin in place as she made hand gestures around her body. And then things shot of your hands and all the weapons that were going to hit you went flying away, and then the guys that attacked you were sent flying backwards like WHOA. The little girl then walked backwards, trying to mimic the manner in which the other Hyuga shinobi were knocked backwards. It was so cool. Hinata and Hayashi both stared at the little girl in surprise. Hanabi, despite her age, was a girl who acted very seriously and without emotion. She in general had a personality more suited to being the head of the Hyuga clan. However, they both occasionally forgot that she was still a child, and like most children, she became excitable upon seeing something they found cool. He. Hinata giggled aloud. I can teach it to you sometime maybe. Yes please. Hanabi requested politely, her smile still on her face. Hayashi watched his two daughters talk about the new jutsu Hinata created and couldn't help but smile. For the first time since his wife's death, he got to be a part of interaction with his family that made him feel like they were a family. It was a feeling that he had missed greatly the past 6 years, and he was glad to have it back. That's it, Lee. Show me how much stronger you have become over this past month. Of course. Be ready, Gai-sensei. Rock Lee and Mato Guy were sparring in a training ground near the Konoha Ninja Academy. A pair of leg weights were in the ground in the center of many craters. The two spandex-wearing shinobi were currently fighting around these craters in a taijutsu battle. Lee dodged a punch from Guy and tried to retaliate with one of his own. The Jonin managed to avoid the attack and tried to deliver a kick against Lee, but the Genin was able to back away just in time. You're getting better at evading my attacks, Guy noted as he tried to attack Lee again. All of our training has been helping. I've never been stronger, Lee shouted as he tried to land a punch at Guy. Guy retaliated by avoiding the fist and delivering a punch of his. His connected, knocking Lee backwards. You fool! Lee was sent flying backwards into a training post. The boy had the air knocked out of him before falling to the ground. Almost immediately, he pulled himself up. He then looked at his sensei in surprise. What do you mean, Guy-sensei? Did I say something wrong? Lee asked in sadness, trying to figure out why he was just called a fool. You can never boast about your strength in that fashion. I've made that point clear before, I hope. But also, you should know to never say things like that because you subconsciously become satisfied with that. You can never say that you have never been stronger, because if you talk like that, you are accepting the strength you have at that very moment. You can never accept it. You have to know that you need to be training. You must know that tomorrow, you will be stronger. And the next day, you will never be stronger. But if you talk about how strong you now, you will become satisfied with what you have, and will never grow stronger in the future. Guy said dramatically. To anyone else, Guy would seem like a strange man trying to sound smart and philosophical. To Lee, however, he came across exactly as what Guy was trying to be, a wise man with sage-like advice. The young Genin started to openly weep at Guy's words. Forgive me, Gai-sensei. I did not mean to act in such an arrogant and unyouthful fashion. He cried loudly, tears rolling down his eyes like waterfalls. You teach me so much. I will remember this from now and will take this as my philosophy from training. From now on, I will never be content with my current strength. I will always grow stronger. Precisely. Guy shouted happily as he rushed over to his student and pulled him into a hug. You really do understand. I am so proud of you, Lee. Gai-sensei. Lee. Gai-sensei. Lee. A little girl walked out of the Konoha Ninja Academy due to a need to leave class early. As she left the building, she saw two spandex-wearing guys hugging each other shouting the other guys' names. She also felt as if she saw a sunset despite it being the early afternoon. She also saw a cliff and waves. The girl started to run away from the sight, heading to her home as fast as she could. I'm hallucinating, I have to be. Guy and Lee continued to have their moment, completely oblivious of the little girl that just ran away and any trauma she may have experienced. 25 days since the preliminary exam. 4 days until the third exam. Risho cursed in pain as he fell back against a tree. The Kurigane was practicing with his older cousin in a forest-like training ground at the outskirts of Konoha, as far away from the civilian population as they could get. Risho was leaning against the tree he hit, breathing hard and sweating. The boy was covered in bruises and cuts all over his body. Many of his cuts were still bleeding profusely. Nevertheless, the boy got up from the tree and gripped two swords tightly, one in each hand. Kosari took a look at his cousin, and how tired he looked, and just sighed. I was hoping that your time in a genin team would have helped improve your strength, but I guess not. You're as weak as always, Risho. The older Kurogane rolled his eyes. I'm stronger. I am. Risho declared loudly. Kosari shook his head. He then charged his younger cousin. Risho had no time to react and was pinned against the tree. The boy coughed up blood in response. No, you really are not. He said sharply with cold eyes. You're still the same, bratty kid. You've always been running around the clan compound trying to get attention. That was maybe acceptable when you were 3 or 4. But you are now a genin representing the Kurogane clan. The older Kurogane grabbed Risho by the neck and brought him close to his face. I personally hate this damn village, but I do recognize that this is the first time Iwa's been to one of Konoha's Chunin exams in years. This is, therefore, the first time the people of Konoha have had the chance to witness our clan's strength. Kosari explained sharply. His grip on Risho's neck intensified. You're pathetic, but surely you are better than some no-name Konoha brats. When it's time for the exam, you better not embarrass our clan, Risho. Believe me, our clan has no place for failures. I know the clan head won't have any, so prove to me you're not a failure. Kosari let go of his cousin's neck, dropping him to the ground. Risho struggled to breathe for a few seconds before he pulled himself up. The Iwa genin then gripped his swords tightly before looking at Kosari in anger and hate, two emotions the older Kurogane had spent years cultivating in the boy. Believe me, I will prove to you and everyone here how strong a Kurogane can be. Risho hissed as he brought his two swords together. I will show you all. Then prove it. Kosari ordered as he removed one of his swords from his scabbard. Risho spat on the ground before turning back to his cousin with the same angry look on his face. I will. Fire style, fireball jutsu. Water style, water wall jutsu. Sarutobi Asuma released a giant fireball from his mouth towards Shino and his Kakachu insects. Shino retaliated by creating a giant wall of water to block the incoming fireball. The fireball collided with the wall of water before it disappeared, having been blocked. Shino released his jutsu. He and his Kakachu were not hit at all by the flames. Ha, looks like your water ninjutsu has improved. Good thing. Asuma said with a chuckle. Shino gave no response except a nod in agreement. Practicing and learning water-style ninjutsu was an idea Asuma had and his father had encouraged after they both discovered that he had a natural affinity towards the element. His Kakachu insects were rather vulnerable to fire and fire-style ninjutsu. When fighting against opponents who used this style of ninjutsu, Shino would be at a major disadvantage. Therefore, learning water-style ninjutsu gave him a method to protect his Kakachu insects from the flames in addition to giving him jutsus that would help him have an edge against the fire-style users. The decision to learn water-style ninjutsu was a logical one, and he agreed with the reasoning behind the choice. Again, I don't really know about Shikamaru, but we both know for a fact that Sasuke knows some fire ninjutsu. And if you fight him in the second round, then you got a leg up on him. You're good enough at the jutsus that you'll render all of his fire jutsus worthless. Asuma declared. That would be ideal. Shino, again, nodded in agreement. You stand a great chance against Nara Shikamaru, and you have different strategies that counter both Uchiha Sasuke and Rock Lee, depending on who you fight. Aburame Shibi noted quietly. Considering that Shino was the only student in Team 10 to make the Chunin exams, Asuma decided he wanted to be directly involved in his training. Therefore, he and Shibi both worked on training Shino, physically and strategically. A month of training with his sensei and his father had prepared Shino for many of the hypothetical scenarios that could result during the matches in the third exam. I have no idea what will happen in the exam, as I do now know how the other genin are training. However, I do feel comfortable in myself so far. Why, you may ask? I've received training this past month from you two that will certainly help me not only in the exam matches, but also in my career in future missions. You have my thanks, Asuma-sensei, father. Shino said as he bowed to his two trainers. Shibi returned Shino's bow. Asuma just chuckled in response. Don't stress out about Shino. I'm your sensei. It's my job to help you out and give you training that you need. He told his student. That is correct, but my gratitude is still there. Shino responded with a shrug. However, there is still time before the exam. If I may, I'd like to practice more. Both my water techniques as well the strategies I've developed with my Kakechu. Shibi nodded as walked forward to assist with the training. Asuma, again, simply chuckled in response. I'm never gonna get used to the way you talk, Shino. Ah, whatever. You're an interesting kid. Asuma told himself as he faced his student. Alright then, let's get back to work. Shino nodded in agreement once again. 26 days since the preliminary exam. 3 days until the third exam. Holy shit. Tenten nearly shouted aloud. The Kunoichi had attempted to hit Niji with a barrage of weapons from her summoning scrolls. She watched as every single one of the weapons were knocked away from Niji as the boy continued to rotate in a circular direction. The spinning continued for a few more seconds until all of Tenten's weapons were lying on the ground. Niji ended his jutsu and finally looked at the result of his jutsu. It worked. The Hyuga noted as he looked at every inch of his body. Not a single injury was taken. I can't believe it, you blocked everything. Tenten commented in a trance-like fashion. For the first time in years, Niji let a small, sincere smile grace his lips. He had managed to learn the 8 trigrams palm rotation, a jutsu reserved solely for the main house of the Hyuga clan, through his own intuition and practice. Tenten, you've helped me accomplish something great. Niji spoke up as the smile started to fade into his trademark smirk. I thank you for your assistance with my training. Tenten shook her head, dropping out of her trance. Due to it though, she failed to see Niji's sincere smile. Nevertheless, she was glad she was able to help it. No problem, Niji. What are teammates for? Glad I was able to help you out. She said happily. Niji nodded as he looked upward to the sky. I'll be fighting Hinata, all of the Hyuga clan will be there. I will defeat her easily, and I will do so with the main house techniques. I will show them the full extent of my training. The Hyuga prodigy told himself as he clenched his fist. The day of the exam was going to be a big day for him. It was a day he was now looking forward to more than he was previously. Father, wherever you are, I hope you'll be watching me in my fight. Niji prayed as an almost malicious grin developed on his face. I will show everyone the full power of the branch family. Unlike the other participants in the Chunin exams, Kankuro of the Sunagakure team was sitting in his room instead of training. He had a wrench in his hand and was making arrangements and adjustments on his puppet, Karasu. Temari was in the room and observed her brother work on the puppet. What are you even adding to it? It seems like you just add the same things over and over again. Temari questioned him as he watched him do his work. Just a couple of little stuff. I'm adding more poison smoke balls in kunai and I'm replacing the poison in Karasu with a stronger poison. This one is definitely going to be lethal. Kankuro answered excitedly. His tone of voice made it clear how much he loved working on his puppets and how interested he was in them. It's a shame you're making all of these adjustments and you aren't even going to fight in the third exam. Temari grumbled in annoyance, bitter about not being able to participate. In response to her comments, Kankuro rolled his eyes. Yeah, sorry, but I don't have a death wish. Maybe I'd fight if I was against anyone else, but I'm not going to even try and take on Gaara. The Suna Kunoichi nodded in understanding, but she was still bitter. She sighed. Where is Gaara anyway? She asked. The puppeteer pointed to his left. Gaara was sitting on the balcony of their hotel room quietly. He's getting impatient. I'm sure he's looking forward to the exam just for all the fighting and death. Kankuro noted with a shiver. An awkward silence passed between the two Suna shinobi. It was interrupted a minute later by Temari. Are you ready for it? She asked him. Kankuro sighed in response. Honestly, no. I know we gotta act in our village's best interest, but I'm not looking forward to this. Agreed. Temari sighed as well. Although I don't see how this is in Suna's best interest. Well, it's what Dad is ordering. And he's the Kazekage, so who are we to judge, I guess? Kankuro replied sadly. We just have to get through that day and hopefully not kill too many people. Hopefully it'll end quickly for everyone. The two genin knew that Kankuro's hope was idealistic and was not going to happen. They were both concerned for the third exam, but for completely different reasons than the other shinobi participating. 27 days since the preliminary exam. 2 days until the third exam. Wind style, wind release stream. Naruto released a controlled stream of wind from his mouth. The wind hit the ground and caused dust to fly upward and cover him. When the dust cleared, Naruto was nowhere in sight. Kurenai looked around for the boy until she felt a hand underneath her grab her leg. The hand attempted to drag her into the ground, but Kurenai simply resisted it. The hand disappeared back into the ground before Naruto pulled himself out of the ground. Nice try, but no. Kurenai said with a smile. I was hoping to get the jump on you. Naruto admitted with a laugh. A try is a try. The Jonin shrugged. Still, it was all very good, Naruto. You were able to create the jutsu perfectly now, and you've been able to master all the different ways it provides utility for you. You even just used it in conjunction with your headhunter jutsu to hide yourself. That was very well done. Well done indeed. Naruto and Kurenai turned around and saw Ibiki and Naruto's clone approaching the two of them. The Uzumaki looked over at the two and smirked. So, what did I learn today? Naruto asked the clone. You'll find out in a second or so. The clone replied before disappearing in a poof of smoke. Naruto obtained memories involving more practice with the Shunshin, being able to actually use the jutsu, and having another strategy talk with Ibiki. The blonde nodded, accepting these memories. He was grinning at the realization that he could perform the Shunshin now as well. Naruto, you've been doing great with the two of us. I can tell you've grown a lot since when we started. Kurenai told the boy. You needed to grow up. Ibiki commented. Ibiki, be nice. Kurenai said to her fellow exam proctor. The TNI head rolled his eyes before continuing. You've improved a lot though. Your strategic mind has developed to an impressive level for a genin. In addition, you now have a couple of jutsu that can help you with strategies and help you fight more strategically. You got the strength, and now you got the mind and some utility in your arsenal. I have a feeling you'll not only get promoted in the exams, but I also feel as if you are going to go far in your career as a shinobi. Maybe all the way to Hokage even. Ibiki then let a smile grace his lips, a rare sight. You've done good, Naruto. The Uzumaki couldn't help it, he jumped his two trainers and hugged them tightly. His eyes were wet with tears threatening to fall down, but he had a large smile on his face. You guys helped me out so much this past month. I really don't think I could have gotten this far without you both. Thank you Kurenai-sensei and Ibiki-sensei for all the help you two have given me. He told them sincerely. We're glad to have helped. Kurenai replied back, returning his hug. Ibiki did not return the hug. He was a man who did not really enjoy physical contact in the nature of hugs. However, he did pat the blonde on the bag and his smile did not fade. Get promoted, kid. That's all we ask. That was a request Naruto intended on keeping. 4 weeks since the preliminary exam. 1 day until the third exam. At around 7 in the evening, Naruto, Hinata, and Shikamaru arrived at Dangoya, the restaurant that they had met Anko and had their meeting after graduating the academy. Their Jonin sensei had asked them to arrive there for a dinner the day before the exam. They had only been there for about 5 minutes before their sensei had arrived. She was dragging a massive bag in her left hand, was holding a bottle of sake in the right hand. "Hey guys!" Anko shouted at them. "You're drinking?" Shikamaru raised his eyebrow at her. "It's just one drink to whet my appetite." His sensei responded with a roll of her eyes. "You don't think this is enough to get me drunk, right? Please, it would take at least another 3 or 4 more." "Whatever." Shikamaru sighed. "Good to see you too, Anko-sensei." "What's with the bag, sensei?" Naruto asked, gesturing to it. We'll talk about that later. For now, let's eat and shit." The Tokubetsu Jonin stated merrily. The 3 genin just shrugged and decided to just do what their sensei suggested. The 4 of them got a table and started to eat. They all chatted and caught up. Anko let them know about her month and she asked some general questions about their training. It was an enjoyable night for Naruto, Hinata, and Shikamaru, and was a great way to end the month of hard, intense training. After the meal was finished and paid for, Anko gestured back to her bag. Her 3 genin stared at it intently. "Alright, I said we'd talk about this later, and well, later is now," Anko said as she pulled the bag to her lap. "Well, basically, you guys are the only genin team I've ever had and, honestly, I was kinda nervous to take up a team. The Hokage kinda forced me into the sensei role, and I really didn't know what I was doing. But you know what, I had a blast, and I got to meet the 3 of you. And honestly, you guys are some of the strongest and nicest kids I think I've ever met. And I normally hate the little shits your age, so that means something. Something." The 3 genin laughed in response to their sensei's words. "Anyway, since tomorrow's the third exam, and I feel confident in saying that you all could get promoted, I wanted to get you all something. A little something to remember me and the team by," she said as she started to dig into her bag. "It'll also make you guys look a lot more stylish for tomorrow." Anko pulled out 3 different outfits, one for each of her students. Each of them included chain mail to wear underneath and also had holders for weapons, but they were all stylized to suit the individual genin. Naruto, Hinata, and Shikamaru stared at them in awe. Naruto's outfit was a jacket similar to the one he wore. It was predominantly black with a navy blue stripe that ran down the sleeves. On the back was the Uzumaki swirl in navy blue, and the kanji for 3 was written on the jacket underneath it. The jacket was also accompanied with black pants with a similar blue stripe running down both legs of the pants. Hinata's outfit also included a jacket. It was a white jacket with sleeves that was colored lavender at the shoulders. On the back of the jacket was also the kanji for 3. The jacket lacked a zipper and was open. Underneath it was a black t-shirt. The outfit also came with purple shorts that would cover up to Hinata's knees. The purple was slightly dark in shade and matched the lavender color on her jacket. Shikamaru's outfit included a gray long-sleeve shirt. The shirt had a white cloud pattern on the sleeves and the back. The clouds on the back of the shirt surrounded the kanji for 3. The outfit also had a pair of new black pants. Yeah, I know you don't have to wear them if you don't want. But hey, I thought that you might look cool in them and look stylish. Just show off who you are, how you guys were part of the most badass team Konoha has ever had," Anko explained. She was rubbing the back of her head sheepishly in a similar fashion to Naruto when he was embarrassed. "Are you kidding? I'm going to wear this almost every day. I love it," Naruto exclaimed. "Not even gonna lie, the clothes do look good," Shikamaru admitted. "They look really comfy too." "Thank you so much," Hinata said happily. The 3 genin rushed over to their sensei and pulled her into a group hug. Anko yelped in surprise at first, before she shrugged and accepted the hug. She would have never believed anyone who told her that she would one day have her own genin team. Nevertheless, here she was with her own team, and it was a team she was proud to claim as her own. Kick-ass tomorrow, guys, and best of luck. I know you'll all make great chunin, she said, tightening the hug. Tomorrow's the day of the exam, Sarutobi-sensei, Jiraiya said to the Hokage. Hiruzen nodded. Indeed. It is also the day of the invasion. Jiraiya and Hiruzen had discussed a plan of action, which was to appear as if they were still in the blind. They will let the exams continue as they had originally been planned. Dosu had managed to tell them about when the invasion would occur. Orochimaru needed the invasion to start during one of Sabaka no Gaara's fights. He preferred for it to occur during a fight with Uchiha Sasuke, as he wanted to see any improvements to Sasuke's strength. Knowing when the invasion would occur, the two men had planned accordingly. The first precaution they made was to now allow civilians to enter the exam arena. They wanted to ensure that all the people in the area would be able to take care of themselves. They had also alerted the daimyos and the other wealthy lords that were attending the exam. They would still remain watching, as Orochimaru would suspect something if they were not there, but they were also had extra security and defenses prepared in case if something came up. They also notified the Umbu. The operatives would remain in disguise as random people watching the exams. They would come out of hiding to fight off the invaders. Other Umbu were also already deployed in key areas, such as the Konoha Ninja Academy, the Konoha Hospital, the areas of the village with a heavy population density, and the gates to Konoha to be prepared for any invaders that would be coming. Dosa had informed them that he knew Orochimaru would try and get the Hokage alone at some point so he could try and kill him. Therefore, Jiraiya would remain hidden by the Hokage's side to make sure that Orochimaru's attempt would not work. He would have to fight both the Hokage and his fellow Sannin. Did you late Inoki know about the invasion, sensei? Jiraiya asked. Hiruzen shook his head. I want to believe that this alliance with IWA could happen, but I also know Inoki was accompanied by other IWA jonin, many of whom hate Konoha. If we let him know about this, then he would probably discuss this with those jonin. They would then have time to convince him to not aid us or, even worse, fight against us. I believe Inoki, in the moment, would choose to aid us and, in the moment, his shinobi would have to side with us as they can't simply ignore their Tsuchikage's orders. The Toad Sannin nodded in understanding. The two men stood at the balcony in the Hokage's office. They looked out towards the exam arena for the third exam. Funny, today's been very peaceful. It's weird, thinking that we know we're going to be attacked tomorrow. Jiraiya commented. It is weird. But in a weird way, I'm looking forward to it. Hiruzen admitted. We know about it and I feel our precautions will keep our village and the people safe. So, we can just focus on our goal, killing Orochimaru. It's about time we take him down, wouldn't you agree? Jiraiya nodded in agreement. It really is. Tomorrow is going to be a busy day for everyone involved. Chapter 24, Collision with Iron. 29 days since the preliminary exam. The day of the third exam. Naruto woke up early in the morning and stretched before getting out of bed. Normally, the blonde would walk slowly, still tired from waking up, to his calendar. Today, Naruto was not tired after waking up and he certainly did not need to check the calendar to see what day it was. Today's the day, he declared happily. The blonde rushed to take a shower. After finishing, he brushed his teeth and ran back to his room to get changed. He put on the news clothes that Anko had given him the night before and proceeded to look into the mirror. Ha, I look so badass, he told himself with a grin. He flexed his right arm. I need to find out where Anko-sensei found this. I'd love to get more clothes like this. After getting dressed, Naruto ate a quick breakfast and then gathered the rest of his things that he would need for the exam. The blonde then opened the door to his apartment and was about to walk off towards the exam. Just as he was about to leave though, he saw a note attached to the door of his apartment. The blonde gave a strange look at the note. He pulled it off and started to read it. Dear Naruto. Hey kid, how are you doing? Doing good, I hope. Today's your big day in the third exam, and you need to be in tip-top, ass-kicking shape. So, I expect nothing less than that. Sorry for not coming by this month, by the way. I was actually hoping to stop by and meet you finally, and maybe even help out with your training for the third exam. But alas, the old monkey we call Hokage decided he needed me. There's a lot of stuff going in Konoha, and I'm doing my best to make sure everything turns out okay here. Once all of this is over though, we need to meet up and do something. Maybe a trip? Or just a dinner and agree to meet up and train every once in a while. I don't really know. We can work out the details a little later. I'll be at the third exam though today. I've got important things to do, but I'll be paying attention to the matches. I'll especially be paying attention to you. You can do this, kid. Earn your promotion. Speaking from personal experience, once you become Chunin, some of the civilian ladies will be all over you for the first few days after your promotion. Take advantage of that, kid. I really don't want to keep you long, so I'll wrap this up here, I guess. I'm watching the exams. Do well for me, will ya? I'm actually gonna put a lot of money on you in a few bets. Maybe if you make me a lot of money, I'll split the profit with you. Something to keep in mind. But regardless how things go, I'm proud of you, and I'm excited to meet you sometime after the exams. Good luck today. Sincerely, the gallant Toad Sage. Naruto reread the letter a second time. After his second reading, the boy gave the letter another confused look. Who the hell wrote this? Who's the gallant Toad Sage? And how does he even know me? Naruto mumbled to himself, trying to think of anyone that he knew that went by the title Gallant Toad Sage. A few minutes passed before the Uzumaki simply put the letter away in his pants back pocket with a shrug. He then started to rush down the way towards the third exam. Well, whoever he is, he'll be watching the exams today, and he believes that I can win. So I guess I'll do my part to make sure his belief was warranted. Naruto mentally told himself. The true third exam was taking place in a large stadium. The stadium was packed with many different visitors as well as shinobi of Konoha. Everyone who entered found their seats and waited for the third exam to start. At the top of the stadium, there was a raised sitting area where the Kage would sit to observe the exams. The Hokage and the Tsuchikage were there, sitting down. They had bodyguards standing to the side of them. Soon, a third Kage walked into the sitting area. The man was wearing white and green robes, and was also wearing a white mask that covered his face. He also had on a green hat on his head that had the kanji 4 wind printed on it. This man was also flanked by 2 bodyguards. Orochimaru. Hiruzen realized immediately who the man was. After hearing of Suna's involvement in the upcoming invasion, he had wondered how Orochimaru had managed to influence the village into deciding to invade. Now, seeing the man in front of him and studying him intently, he could sense Orochimaru's dark, sinister chakra and bloodlust from him. So, this is how you did it. You killed the Kazekage and you're acting as the Kazekage in his place. The Hokage knew he couldn't act against the man just yet. Therefore, he put on a smile and greeted the man politely. Kazekage-sama, it is nice to see you. I hope your travel went well. It was fine, thank you. It is nice to see you, Hokage-sama. The Kazekage replied. The man then turned to Inoki. It is a pleasure to see you as well, Tsuchikage-sama. I had not expected you would send a team to a Konoha exam. Humph. I can do whatever I want. Hope I'm not an inconvenience to you. Inoki rolled his eyes in response. Forgive me. I wasn't trying to be hostile with my response. I was just trying to express my surprise. The Kazekage replied apologetically. Yeah. Whatever. The Sandaime Tsuchikage shrugged in response. He then turned his attention to the Sandaime Hokage. Hey, Hiruzen, are we starting this thing already? Now that we have all the Kage here, we can start this now. Indeed. I guess it is time. Hiruzen noted with a chuckle. He got out of his seat and walked forward to the edge of the seating area. He was standing in a place where everyone in the arena could see him. Ladies and gentlemen, visitors and residents of Konohagakure no Sato, thank you all for coming today. The Hokage spoke loudly, getting the attention of everyone in the arena. It is now time for the final part of this year's Chunin exams. The matches will begin in a few minutes. I hope you enjoy the matches and have a good day. Now, without further ado, I present to you our exam proctor as well as the 11 genin who qualified for the final part of the exam. After the Hokage spoke, the 11 genin that qualified for the third exam walked forward into the arena. They stood in the battlefield for the third exam. Each genin received a loud applause from the audience in the arena stands. Shortly after everyone arrived, a man entered the arena. He had brown shoulder-length hair and wore a Konoha forehead protector as a bandana over his hair. He wore the standard Jonin uniform and had a senbon in his mouth. My name is Shiranui Genma, and I will be the proctor of the third exam. The man, Genma, introduced himself to everyone. Ha! Kuratsuchi blinked in confusion. Not to be rude or anything, sir, but we had a different proctor for the preliminaries. What happened to him? Yes, we did. What happened to Hayate-san? Lee asked in concern. That doesn't concern you all. Genma answered dismissively. The members of Team 3 who went to Hayate's funeral knew exactly what the new proctor was talking about. Naruto and Hinata frowned at the thought of Hayate's death while Shikamaru looked deep in thought. Anyway, I suppose you all remember the order of the fights, correct? Genma questioned. Seeing everyone nod caused him to continue to talk. Then we can just get started. The first match will be between Kurogane Risho and Uzumaki Naruto. You two remain here in battlefield. Everyone else, head on up to the waiting area where you will be able to watch the matches. The remaining 9 genin nodded in understanding. They then started to walk away from the arena. Naruto-kun, good luck. Hinata told her crush with a smile on her face. I know you can do it. Hee, thanks. I'll do my best. Naruto answered. The boy actually had a slight blush on his cheeks. Looking red Naruto. Shikamaru noted with a teasing grin. Ha! Naruto seemed to become aware of his blush. He then glared at the Nara. Shut up Shikamaru. Meh. The Nara shrugged. He then gave the blonde a thumbs up. As Hinata said, good luck out there. Naruto replied by giving him a thumbs up as well. Hinata and Shikamaru then turned around to join the other genin that had qualified for the exam. Soon, Risho and Naruto were left alone on the battlefield. That asshole is fighting first. Kiba growled at the sight of Risho. Inuzuka Kiba, Akamaru, and Haruno Sakura were sitting together in the arena stands. Kiba had many bandages covering his body from all the cuts he received in his fight with Risho. The bandages were especially thick on his stomach, where Risho had landed his deepest cuts. You think he'll lose? Sakura asked as she glared at the IWA boy. Eventually, he has to. But I don't know right now. The Inuzuka side. Naruto's obviously gotten better, cause he actually made it to the finals. But that IWA punk, he's tough. He's like a monster. I don't know if Naruto can stand a chance. Sakura frowned at that. Naruto had always annoyed her at the academy, but she had never thought that he was an awful person or anything. If anything, she now recognized that he was a really kind person who always tried to be nice to her. Poor Naruto, I hope he doesn't have to get taken to the hospital afterwards. She said. He doesn't deserve that. Kiba nodded with a growl again. But who knows, maybe he'll surprise us. I'd personally love to see that asshole IWA punk get his butt kicked sooner than later. Akamaru barked loudly in agreement with his partner. Sitting in a section of the stands by themselves were the Iwagakure visitors, including Yowamushi Roto, Han, Rashi, and Kusari. They were all paying great attention to the fight about to start. How did Risho's training go, Kusari-san? Han queried. You were probably able to help him better than I was in improving in his kenjutsu and his bloodline. For a Kurigane, he could probably be considered mediocre at best. But to Konoha standards, that's probably Jonin level. Kusari said with a smug grin. Risho will win this fight in approximately 30 seconds. Anything longer would be an insult to our clan. My god, his whole clan is filled with assholes. Roto noted in shock. So that's Naruto, huh? The QB boy. Rashi noted with a smirk. I've been looking forward to seeing that brat in action. This'll be good. I personally know Naruto well, and I am Risho's sensei. I feel confident in saying this will be an interesting match. Han commented in a seemingly neutral voice. But you're rooting for Naruto, right, Han-sensei? Roto questioned, openly rooting against his teammate. I am rooting for both to impress and make Chunin. Han stated. That being said, I do feel as if Risho has a few lessons he could learn from losing a match like this, so if he were to lose and learn these lessons, then I'd feel he would win in the grand scheme of things. So you are rooting for Naruto as well then? Roto laughed. Bah. Kusari rolled his eyes at the words of his fellow IWA shinobi. Anko, due to the fact that all three of her students had made it into the third exam, was not allowed to sit next to any of them. As a result, she opted to sit next to her friends Ibiki and Kurenai. So I guess it's time to see how you guys worked with Naruto. Anko exclaimed. I'm really excited to see what you guys were able to do with the kid. I think we made a lot of progress. Kurenai told her friend with a smile. Naruto-kun's the kind of student anyone would pay money to have. He throws himself headfirst into the training and doesn't stop trying until he accomplishes what he's trying to do. I have to admit, he is a good student. You got lucky with him, Anko. Ibiki stated. Even Ibiki's complimenting him? The snake summoner blinked in surprise before a grin developed on her face. Did he grow on you, Ibiki-kun? Ibiki responded to Anko's question with a growl and an eye roll. Anko laughed, taking his response as an affirmation. But I have to admit, I am excited to see him as well. I think he will do great today. Kurenai commented as her eyes focused towards the center. This'll be interesting, to say the very least. Ibiki nodded in agreement. Well, it's about to start, so we'll see. Anko declared excitedly. Come on, Naruto. You got everyone's attention. Show us all what you got. Hiruzen, your blonde kid, who is that? Anoki questioned, his eyes focused on the boy. That is Uzumaki Naruto. He is rather headstrong and confrontational at times, but he has a lot of heart. And honestly, I think he may be one of Konoha's strongest shinobi in the future. Hiruzen answered with a smile. Uzumaki. Anoki repeated the last name with a frown. The Sandaime Tsuchikage couldn't help but focus on the blonde. The blonde looked familiar to him. He resembled another Konoha shinobi that he had the displeasure of knowing. The very sight of Naruto bothered Anoki. Does he have any relatives? He asked quietly. He resembles your Yondaime greatly. Hiruzen actually frowned in response. Naruto-kun is an orphan, having lost his family years ago. The boy, sadly, has no family. The Sandaime Hokage then gave the Tsuchikage a strange look. You think he resembles my deceased successor? Strange, I don't see it. Anoki blinked in surprise. You don't see it? No. Naruto-kun has the blonde hair, but nothing else reminds me of Minato. Hiruzen responded. Anoki stared at the Hokage intently, looking for any signs of deception. A few seconds passed before he sighed and turned his attention back to the genin. Whatever. It was just a passing thought. Just to let you both know, I think the fight is about to begin. The Kazekage commented. The Hokage and Tsuchikage nodded as they waited to see the fight between the two genin. Naruto and Risho were facing each other in the middle of the battlefield. The two were staring at each other intently, glaring at the other. You know, I've been looking forward to this ever since the mission to Tenchi Bridge. Naruto told the IWA genin. Oh? Risho rolled his eyes in response. You were an asshole to me and my team. Hell, you were an asshole to Roto as well for being a civilian-born shinobi. Your superiority complex has pissed me off for far too long, and I'm more than glad to finally get the opportunity to take you down. Naruto exclaimed as he cracked his knuckles. Humph. It's funny, you think I give a damn what some clanless orphan from Konoha thinks? Risho scoffed. Ugh, you just hate everything, and it's so damn annoying and confusing. I don't get you at all. And I don't know if I even want to. The Uzumaki rolled his eyes as he got into a fighting stance. You don't have to get me. I don't care. The Kurogane replied as his hands went to his side. Naruto then noticed that Risho had a second scabbard attached to his pants, meaning that he had a second sword. All I want to do is fight and show everyone here how a true shinobi, one of the Kurogane, fights. Kurogane clan this. Kurogane clan that. That's all you ever talk about, and I'm sick of it. Naruto rolled his eyes. You want to show how strong you are? Then bring it. Jinma eyed the two genin before he raised his right hand into the air. The match between Uzumaki Naruto and Kurogane Risho, begin. Risho drew both swords from his scabbards. Naruto responded by jumping backwards to put distance between the two. The blonde then made his trademark hand sign. Shadow Clone Jutsu. 15 clones appeared next to the blonde. After appearing, they then charged at Risho. Each of them had their fists ready and tried to land a hit on him. Risho responded by sidestepping out of the way of the first shadow clone, and then swiping the sword in his right hand through the clone, causing it to disappear immediately. He then used his other sword to cut into another clone, destroying it upon impact. Naruto's clones tried to land a hit on the IWA genin, but none of them managed to land a single attack. Risho avoided all of their attempts and managed to cut through each and every one of them. A few seconds passed and all the shadow clones were destroyed, leaving the original Naruto alone in his original position at a distance. Hiding behind your clones? Fight me face to face, you coward. Risho taunted with a smug grin on his face as he pointed one of his swords at the blonde. Coward? As if. I was just using my clones to see exactly how you fight for a sec. And honestly, not that impressed. Naruto responded with a grin of his own. Humph. Risho scoffed in anger before he charged at the blonde. The Kurogane reached Naruto and swung at the blonde with the sword in his right hand. Naruto avoided the attack. Risho proceeded to try and cut the boy with the sword in his left hand, but the Uzumaki dodged it as well. Risho stayed on the offensive, trying to land a cut on the Uzumaki. Naruto stayed on the defensive, avoiding Risho's swords. They continued in the same manner for a few seconds until Risho started to get annoyed. His movements and his sword swinging became faster and more aggressive. Naruto did his best to avoid the attacks. After realizing that Naruto was going to be avoiding his swords, Risho changed tactics. He got in close to Naruto and did a sweeping kick. The Uzumaki was knocked off his feet and fell to the ground. Heh, gotcha. Risho smirked as he raised his swords. The Kurogane attempted to attack Naruto using both of his swords. Naruto, however, made a hand sign and disappeared in a poof of smoke. What the dash? Risho blinked in surprise as he turned around. Naruto had used the Shunshin to avoid Risho's attack. The blonde was now directly behind Risho. He delivered a punch to the Iwa Genin's face, knocking him backwards slightly. Naruto then quickly made hand signs. Wind style, great breakthrough. Naruto released a large gust of wind from his mouth towards Risho, who was recovering Naruto's surprise attack. Realizing that he had no time to avoid the jutsu, Risho made a hand sign of his own. Iron style, armor of iron. Risho's body was covered in a silver-grayish armor. The now encased Iwa Genin received the gust of wind head-on, but he was not fazed in the slightest. Once Naruto's wind jutsu ended, the armor disappeared from Risho's body. The Kurigane's body showed no scratches or evidence of being hit from Naruto's attack. And there's that damn armor, Naruto noted as he shook his head in annoyance. Beautiful, isn't it? Risho asked with a smirk that contained elements of smugness and pride. You're gonna have to try a lot harder if you want to even scratch my armor. Oh, I'll do better than that. You keep using that armor to hide from my attacks, I'm just gonna end up ripping it off your body. Naruto exclaimed as he cracked his knuckles. Risho rolled his eyes in response. The Iwa Genin charged at Naruto, gripping his swords tightly in his hands. Naruto, seeing the Iwa Genin coming for him, made quick hand signs before bringing his hands to his mouth. Wind style, wind release stream. Naruto released a small stream of wind from his mouth towards Risho. The Kurigane, seeing the wind jutsu heading for him, moved out of the way. Naruto, after seeing that the wind was not going to hit the Iwa Genin, changed directions of the wind and aimed at the ground. The ground released a giant dust cloud that covered the area surrounding Naruto. Risho stopped moving at the sight of the large dust cloud and stared at it intently. What are you trying to do? The dust cloud remained in the arena for a few seconds. It soon cleared up, revealing 20 different Naruto clones, all of them ready to charge at Risho. The Iwa Genin actually laughed at the sight of the clones. Are you seriously trying that shadow clone bullshit again? I'll just cut straight through your clones again. Risho smirked loudly. The clones all glared at the boy. They then proceeded to run around the Iwa Genin and surround him. After he was surrounded, the 20 clones all charged and attacked in unison. Oh, you all think you can actually hit me if you attack at once? Funny. The swordsman taunted as he brought his swords together. Kurigane Kenjutsu style, intercepting blade. As the clones moved forward to attack, Risho spun in place in a circular fashion. His swords, along with his body, were moving at a rapid speed. The hilts collided with the fists of Naruto's clones, blocking their attacks. Upon intercepting the fists, Risho would then turn his swords around to deliver a cut on the clones of Naruto. As Naruto's clones continued to attack the Kurigane, Risho continued to block and counterattack. Seconds passed before all Naruto clones were destroyed. Upon cutting through the last clone, Risho was left alone. This caused the boys' eyes to widen as they started to scan the stadium fighting grounds. Where the hell did he go? Risho asked himself. The ground underneath Risho started to crack, answering Risho's question. Naruto jumped out of the ground directly under Risho and delivered a punch to the boy's jaw. Risho was knocked upward, coughing up blood. Naruto then delivered a kick to the boy's stomach, knocking him backwards. The Kurigane hit the ground hard. Looking for me? Naruto taunted with a smirk on his face. Bastard. Risho growled as he pulled himself off the ground, his hands still gripping his swords. Using the wind release stream to create a dust cloud for him to hide in so he can create more shadow clones, that was all a distraction. He really used the dust cloud to use the headhunter jutsu, and make Risho not know where he was. Anko had a large grin on her face as she watched the fight. I've never seen Naruto fight like this. It's exciting. Looks like he really did learn a few things from our lessons, Ibiki-san? Kurenai commented, nudging her fellow exam proctor. Ibiki nodded, a smile of his own on his face. If he continues to develop what we taught him, Uzumaki Naruto will make a great tactician. And in doing so, he may become an unstoppable force like no one the shinobi nations have seen before. In the waiting area for the Genin participants, all 9 Genin were standing at the rails watching the match. Hinata, Shikamaru, and Kuratsuchi were all standing side by side, watching the match with wide eyes. I never knew Naruto was a tactician. This is exciting. Kuratsuchi exclaimed. I didn't either. This must have been what he trained in during the training month. Shikamaru realized. A smirk developed on his face. So far, he's doing a damn good job. He's always a step ahead of Risho. But I know Risho. I'm sure this is pissing him off. And I just know he's going to do something to at least balance the scales a bit. Kuratsuchi commented as her eyes focused on her teammate. We'll see. Shikamaru shrugged in response. Hinata said nothing. She simply stared at Naruto with a slight blush on her face and a large smile on his face. Naruto-kun, you've grown so much. I can't wait to see what else you can do. Hinata thought to herself, looking forward to the rest of the match. Risho managed to pull himself on the ground. He stared at Naruto intently, his mind running frantically. I can't believe it, he's actually landing hits on me. I can't use my armor if he keeps landing these surprise attacks on me. This can't be happening, this was supposed to be my freebie match. This was supposed to show my strength to Kasari. If I actually lose this match, I'll... Risho shook his head, rejecting the idea. I can't. I won't. No holding back, no saving tricks for later, I need to win this now. With this new determination in mind, Risho charged forward at Naruto. The Uzumaki then jumped backwards again to keep his distance. Not happening. I'm not gonna let you keep fighting me from a distance any longer. Risho shouted loudly, gripping his swords tightly. Kyurigane Kenjutsu style, length increase. Risho swung the sword in his right hand at a distance, away from Naruto. As he cut through the air, the sword's length increased at a rapid rate. With its new length, the sword's blade now reached Naruto's distance. What the fuck? Naruto nearly croaked in surprise as he barely avoided the sword. Risho then swiped forward with the sword in his left hand. This sword also increased in length, reaching Naruto's distance. Naruto reacted slower than the previous time and received a cut in his stomach. Shit. He cursed as he closed his eyes from the pain. The Uzumaki jumped backwards to get away from the swords. Risho responded by swinging his swords again, the lengths of the blades increasing to match Naruto's new distance. Realizing that he couldn't avoid the swords through distance anymore, Naruto made a hand sign. Risho attempted to cut through again, but the boy disappeared in a poof of smoke. Shunshin again, huh? Risho realized. He stopped his jutsu, returning his swords back to normal length. He then turned around. As Risho predicted, Naruto was now behind the boy. The blonde tried to deliver a punch to the Iwa Genin's face, but Risho responded by blocking the fist with the hilt of one of his swords. Risho then used his other sword and attempted to cut the blonde. Naruto disappeared again, using the Shunshin once more. Using his Shunshin, Naruto teleported behind Risho once again. He then quickly made hand signs. Risho turned around to find Naruto, but the blonde managed to finish his hand signs. He then brought his hands together. Wind style, great breakthrough. Iron style, armor of iron. Naruto released a large gust of wind that collided against Risho's iron armor. Once again, the wind did not faze Risho. His armor prevented him from being blown away or receiving any damage. Shit. I really thought my jutsu would have hit him before that armor went up. Naruto cursed in his head. I need to think of something. Naruto's eyes wandered away from Risho's armor-covered body. He stared at the ground below Risho, and an idea entered his head. I know what to do. The blonde proceeded to aim the gust of wind from his great breakthrough jutsu at the ground. The heavy wind created another large dust cloud surrounding the two shinobi. Naruto then ended his jutsu and jumped backwards out of the dust cloud. He then made another hand sign and sank into the ground using the headhunter jutsu. Now that he was no longer being attacked by the wind, Risho released his armor. He then quickly jumped out of the dust cloud as his eyes began to search the battlefield. Damn wind and dust. Risho grumbled, still looking across the battlefield. I don't see him though, meaning that he went back underground. Risho continued to look across the battlefield for any sign of Naruto. He then heard a sound, the sound that he heard when Naruto jumped out of the ground earlier. Where are you? Risho shouted as he looked at the ground for any sign of the ground cracking. There were no visible signs of the ground cracking anywhere. As Risho continued to look, Naruto jumped out of the dust cloud. What the dash? Naruto delivered a punch to Risho's face, knocking him out of his thoughts. The IWA genin was knocked back further than before. He hit the ground hard and rolled on it before coming to a stop. What the? Roto stared back and forth between Naruto and Risho in confusion. We all saw Naruto use the headhunter jutsu when he got out of the dust cloud. How did he get back in the dust cloud to attack Risho? Naruto used the jutsu to hide his movements from Risho. Once Risho jumped out of the dust cloud, Naruto returned to it. He knew that Risho would expect an attack from underground, but he also knew that Risho would not expect an attack from the dust cloud, where the two had been prior. Han noted. The Gobi Jinchuriki's voice conveyed how impressed he was with Naruto's fighting. Honestly, I was not expecting this. From what you said, I thought that Naruto was one of those brats who just charges headfirst into things. I'm actually impressed. Rashi complimented with a grin. When he becomes Jonin, I'd love to take him on. See exactly how that mind of his works. In all honesty, I would be interested in fighting Naruto myself. Han nodded in agreement. I can only imagine what the boy will be like as a Jonin in a few years. Kosari ignored the words of the two IWA Jinchuriki and Roto. Instead, his eyes were focused on Risho. The man was glaring at the boy. Risho, I thought I made it clear that the clan wants no disappointments. He growled mentally. We're not over yet, are we, Risho? I'm just getting started. Naruto taunted. Shut up. Risho cursed as he pulled himself off the ground. The IWA genin pulled himself off the ground and gave Naruto the most hateful, angry look that the blonde had seen. Naruto frowned in response and started to speak. No, really, I hope we aren't done yet. All trash talking aside, I'm actually having fun. It's been a long time since I had a fight like this and I'm loving it. The Uzumaki told the boy. For fun, this is all just one giant game to you. Being a shinobi and all that. Risho's glare intensified on Naruto. Of course not. Being a shinobi is the most serious thing to me. Naruto retaliated, returning Risho's glare with one of his own. But this is just a fight for the exams. Our lives aren't on the line, so we are able to fight and actually try and learn a few things from it to help us improve as shinobi as whole for future missions. And I'm already learning things about my strengths and weaknesses in this fight. Is it really a bad thing that I'm having a little fun in the process? This is not fun. This is war, and my life is on the line. Risho hissed as he gripped his swords tightly. What the hell are you talking about? No one's going to kill you if you lose this fight. Naruto shouted back. The IWA genin did not immediately respond. He looked down at the ground. Slowly, the ground underneath him was wet. Risho then looked up at Naruto with angry, tear-filled eyes. If I lose, if I embarrass my clan, then I am going to be removed from my clan. And to me, that might as well be death. Risho shouted at Naruto. The Uzumaki's eyes widened in shock. What? Removed from his clan? Roto repeated Risho's words in surprise. Kasari, explain. Now. Han demanded in a quiet, emotionless tone of voice. I shouldn't have to explain to you, Han. But if you must know, then I informed Risho that our clan has no place for embarrassments. The Kurogane clan lost too many shinobi in the war, and we can't afford any weak, useless shinobi. So, if he does in fact embarrass the clan and show his weakness, then I will have him removed from the clan. He will be disowned by the clan head and his family, and he will be considered an outsider to the clan. Kasari answered coldly. What the fuck? Roto shouted. He glared at the elder Kurogane. I don't like Risho much, but I know how much the Kurogane clan means to him. His pride as a Kurogane is everything to him. Why would you take that away from him? If he's not strong enough, then he doesn't deserve the pride. Kasari replied with a shrug. Do you even have the authority to pull this off? Rashi questioned with a glare of his own. I do know for a fact that you are not the clan head. I know the geezer who runs your damn clan. Do not pretend to be an expert on how our clan is run, Rashi. The Kurogane rolled his eyes in response. I have plenty of sway in our clan's politics. And again, our clan can't afford to have any weaklings. If Risho fails to meet our standards, then I will personally see him removed. You mean your standards? Roto corrected, still glaring at the man in front of him. Be quiet, civilian-born trash. Kasari hissed. Han closed his eyes. For the first time in years, since the day he lost control of the Gobi, the armor-wearing Jonin felt guilt. I made an error in bringing him here. I should have done research on the man. I simply saw that he was your cousin and was an expert in the Kurogane Kenjutsu. I am truly sorry, Risho. Risho. Naruto looked at the Iwa Genin with a frown on his face. I'm not going to lose. I can't afford to lose. Risho exclaimed loudly. The Kurogane sheathed his swords. He then reached into the pockets of his pants and pulled out a set of 10 iron daggers. He gripped them tightly in his hands as he glared at Naruto, his eyes now free of tears. I hope you're ready for this. This is the end. He growled as he proceeded to toss the daggers at Naruto. After tossing all 10 daggers, Risho made a series of hand signs. Iron style, iron dragon bullets. The iron surrounding the daggers started to change shapes. These daggers changed shapes, resembling dragon heads with a small tail at the end of them. All 10 iron dragons floated in the air, facing Naruto. What jutsu is this? Naruto stared at the floating iron dragon heads in awe. Risho made a pushing gesture with his hands. The iron dragon heads then flew forward towards Naruto. Naruto's eyes widened as he barely avoided the onslaught from the dragon heads. The dragon heads continued forward until they hit the walls at the edge of the arena. Upon making contact, they ricocheted off the surface and headed back to Naruto at a faster speed. What the dash? Naruto shouted as he jumped out of the way, avoiding the dragon heads again. Shit, that was close. It's not over yet. Risho stated as he made another hand gesture. The dragon heads, once again, collided with the walls of the arena and ricocheted off the surface. They were now moving even faster. Naruto attempted to dodge the dragon heads again, but he failed and was hit by one of them in the stomach. The blonde's eyes winced in pain as he coughed up some blood. As Naruto was recovering from the collision, 4 of the remaining dragon heads attacked Naruto. They pushed the Konoha shinobi backwards to the walls of the arena. 2 of the dragon heads used their mouths to pin his heads to the wall, while the other 2 pinned the boy's legs. The remaining 6 dragon heads remained floating in the air in front of the boy. Ugh. Naruto, upon being pinned against the walls, started to cough up more blood. Naruto-kun. Hinata nearly screamed from her position in the waiting room. Shit, this looks bad. Shikamaru cursed as his fists tightened. Kuratsuchi said nothing as her eyes focused on Naruto's pinned body. Oh my gosh. Sakura gasped as she saw Naruto get pinned to the wall. Damn. Kiba shook his head in frustration. Naruto was actually kicking his ass. I guess it's over now. Naruto struggled against the dragon heads, trying to free himself. None of his efforts worked. Risho watched Naruto try to free himself and smirked at the sight of him failing. He quickly pulled out his swords from their sheaths once again. And that's the end of that. He informed Naruto as he gripped his swords tightly. Now, even though I said this was war, I'm not going to try and kill you. This is going to hurt though, and you're definitely going to wake up in the hospital. After those words, Risho charged forward at Naruto, ready to make one final strike at the boy. Naruto watched Risho approach him and couldn't help but curse. He was about to brace for the upcoming attack, but then an idea entered his head. I'm out of options, so this is really all I can do. I just hope this works. Naruto closes his eyes and tried to relax himself to the best of his abilities. Come on, Kyuubi, I could really use your chakra now. Red chakra slowly started to surround Naruto's body. The blonde's features slowly became more fox-like. He then opened his eyes, which now contained a red tint to them. Naruto then started to struggle again against the dragon heads. This time though, he was able to move his body slightly against his restraints. After struggling for a bit, Naruto managed to release himself from his restraints and pull himself off the wall. The dragon heads that had pinned him to the wall fell to the ground. Risho, who had been charging at Naruto, couldn't help but stop his charge and stare blankly at Naruto in awe. His eyes were wide open and he couldn't help but mumble to himself in surprise, "How, that's not possible." Naruto, now free, channeled the remaining bit of Kyuubi's chakra and made hand signs. Wind style, great breakthrough. Naruto released the largest gust of wind that he had ever released. Risho, seeing the wind approaching him, quickly made a hand sign. Iron style, armor of iron. Risho's body was covered in his silver-grayish armor. Now covered in his armor, Risho was able to resist the wind. I can't have this battle last much longer, it needs to end now. Naruto told himself as he pumped more chakra into his jutsu. I need to destroy that armor of his. Naruto's gust of wind became even stronger. Even wearing his armor, Risho felt himself being pushed back slightly into the ground. Naruto's wind was also affecting another iron source now, however, Risho's remaining iron dragon heads. The 6 remaining iron dragon heads that had been floating in front of Naruto were now being pushed backwards. Naruto's wind then knocked the dragon heads backwards. They proceeded to collide against Risho's armor one by one. With each subsequent hit, the dragon head crumbled into iron fragments and Risho's armor started to crack. By the 6th dragon head, Risho's armor crumbled to the ground. No way, impossible. Risho screamed in his head as he felt his defense fall apart. Aha! Risho was now forced to take the impact of Naruto's great breakthrough head-on. The IWA Genin was sent flying backwards from the wind as his body was cut from the wind. He screamed in pain until he made contact with the wall at the other end of the arena. Naruto proceeded to end his jutsu. Risho then fell to the ground hard. Kyuubi's chakra started to fade from Naruto's body. The boy was panting heavily as he continued to stare at Risho's body, waiting for him to get back up. Is that it? Naruto asked himself, realizing that Risho was making no noticeable attempts to get up. Jinma, thinking similarly to Naruto, rushed over to check Risho. The IWA Genin was, somehow, still conscious. However, his body was covered in cuts and he was bleeding heavily. Jinma assessed the situation easily. Risho was in no condition to continue fighting. The match is over. Winner, Uzumaki Naruto. The crowd started to applaud and shout after watching the match, cheering for Naruto in congratulations. Fuck yeah! Kiba shouted loudly. Akamaru barked in approval. He actually pulled it off. He tore off that IWA guy's armor and ended up winning. Sakura's eyes were wide as she stared at Naruto in surprise. Naruto, how much better did you become? Naruto, if you were a girl, I would kiss you. Kiba screamed again, whistling loudly in approval. Kiba, that's creepy. Sakura turned her attention to her teammate, who she started to slowly inch away from. Yeah. That's my student. Anko screamed in approval. Anko, don't scream that loudly. Don't embarrass yourself. Ibiki scolded his partner in the TNI department. Ah, shut up, Ibiki. I'll scream whenever I want to. Anko rolled her eyes before continuing to shout. I knew you could do it, Whiskers. Way to kick ass. Just leave her be, Ibiki-san. Kurenai chuckled as she watched her friend cheer. Naruto-kun did, indeed, do a good job. Let her cheer. Humph. Ibiki shook his head. A smile then appeared on his face. The boy did do good indeed. Hear that, Whiskers? Even Marino fucking Ibiki is praising you. Anko screamed, somehow in an even louder voice. Ibiki face-palmed in response to Anko's cheering, which only caused Kurenai to giggle. Shikamaru whistled in approval after watching the fight. Son of a bitch, he actually managed to get out of that situation back there. Way to go, Naruto-kun. Hinata cheered loudly. Heh, he did good. Very good. Shikamaru commented with a chuckle, agreeing with his teammate. So, he can use the Kyuubi's chakra effectively, and he managed to use it to defeat Risho. Naruto, I'm looking forward to our fight greatly. Kuratsuchi told herself with a grin on her face. Her eyes then wandered over to Risho's body, which caused her grin to turn into a frown. She remembered what Risho had said earlier in the match about being removed from his clan. Now that Risho had lost, she was hoping that the boy was going to be okay. Bah. Pathetic. Kusari cursed. Worthless brat. Still no better than when he was a little kid. Kusari, please leave. Han spoke up in his neutral tone of voice. And why? The Kurogane glared at the Gobi Jinchuriki. I've heard you backtalk my student for too long today. I've learned things about you and your clan that I wish I had never learned. Now, I'm not going to ask you again. Leave. Han ordered. Listen here, Han dash. Leave. Han shouted. Kusari glared at the Gobi Jinchuriki for a few seconds before walking off without a word. Han, Rashi, and Roto were now left alone. With family like that, it's no wonder Risho acts like a dick. Roto shook his head. Hopefully your student will be okay when this is all over. I don't think life is going to be very easy for him if Kusari really has that much influence in the Kurogane clan. Rashi commented to Han. I have to hope that he will be okay. Han shook his head in frustration. He will be. Kuratsuchi and I will be there right by his side to help him if he needs someone. Roto spoke up. If he needs a family, I'm sure my family wouldn't mind him living with us for a while. He doesn't have to accept, of course. But I'll be there if he needs help. We'll all be there for him. Han agreed, a small smile crossing his lips underneath his mask. Naruto couldn't help but grin upon hearing the applause. He looked around at all the different people in the stands clapping and cheering, and he gave them all a large, sincere smile. After enjoying his moment in the spotlight, Naruto then rushed over to Risho. The boy was still laying down on the ground, but he was now laying upwards. The IWA genin was also crying. Sniff, what, do you want? Risho questioned between tears. J, just rub your salt in the wounds and G, get out of my face. Naruto shook his head at the idea of rubbing salt in the wounds. He then smiled at the IWA genin. Your clan would be fools to remove you. Risho actually stopped crying at that comment. He was now staring at Naruto in complete surprise, not expecting such a comment from the boy. I can't even remember the last time I had a fight like that. You did a good job, Risho, and if they don't see that, then that's on them, not you. You're tough. Naruto told him. Take my words with a grain of salt. After all, I am a clanless orphan from Konoha. But I think you made your clan proud and pulled off a good fight, and I'd love to spar against you sometime in the future. The blonde told him as he started to walk away. Provided that you can pull that stick out of your ass and stop being a dick to everyone, of course. Naruto walked away and headed upstairs to the waiting room to meet up with the other genin. Risho remained on the ground until medical shinobi arrived on the scene to escort him to a clinic to heal his wounds. The IWA genin was deep in thought, reflecting on Naruto's words and praise. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.